All right, thank you, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Roll call, please, Pat.
Sir, come on.
Here.
Derek Andrews.
Present.
Dr. Michael Joseph.
Here.
John Hurd.
Present.
Riley Hartwell.
Here.
Rick Jordan.
Present.
Jeff Pope.
Present. All right, you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. You guys have had an opportunity to look at the agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Derek.
I'll second.
Second by Sherrick. All right, please vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. All right, first up, celebrations. We have a few. All right. First up, the JHS Theater Department packed their first semester with productions, beginning the season with Little Women in October. A musical review, All Together Now, followed November, featuring current and former JHS theater students. And the season just closed with a student-written, student-directed version of Alice in Wonderland. More than 1,800 Joplin Schools elementary and pre-K students attended these performances. And then coming soon, spring 2022 musical production, The Little Mermaid. So been very busy in the theater. Good job, guys. And then a newsworthy science note, Joplin High School science rock star Carissa Boyer made a presentation this fall at the High School Research Teachers Conference. The presentation highlighted how Ms. Boyer uses the publication Science News in the classroom to enhance her curriculum in both general education and research classes. Carissa demonstrated how research students have used the publication to select topics and achieve successful outcomes. So very nice that she's able to share what we're doing with the High School Research Teachers Conference. Thank you. And then Christmas of Hope 2021. Joplin schools and staff of Franklin Technology Center recently presented a $7,000 check to Christmas of Hope. FTC students and Mr. Lauren Curtis organize the district-wide fundraiser each year. The Christmas of Hope organizers are blown away by their hard work and generosity and are so proud to see our local youth leading the way and helping local kids in foster care. Special thank you to Mr. Lauren Curtis, the construction teacher at Franklin Tech, who heads up this effort every year. So it's great to we're taking care of our own community. So good job, guys. Okay. We also have a celebration, Dr. Mwangi.
Yes, and I will invite up and bring a couple of chairs. Mr. Teal, Mrs. Cook, and Mr. White. We originally thought we would have students for you, but believe it or not, they're all in extracurricular activities. So instead of pulling them away from those practices, these are our 3 PLTW robotics teachers, one from each middle school. Laurel is at South, and Brandon is at East, and Aaron is at North. So the students created a presentation, and so I think we're going to walk through that a little bit, and then they're just going to kind of give you an update of this course that we approved and how it's been going. We just are wrapping up semester 1.
All right, there's some animations on this. My students were very excited to add in all of the cool transitions and stuff. They've been working pretty hard and they're very, very flexible. Someone asked me if there were any job-related skills that they would develop through this, and a ton, aside from teamwork and all that stuff. They've been very flexible and very open to problem solving when things, either we're waiting on stuff to be ordered, they're very good at planning and moving forward once the stuff gets there. So budgeting time, if you get your stuff late, they're really good about knowing what they need to get done by when and how to budget that time and those kinds of things. But I won't read through all this. We can just go through. Basically what they do is they build all the mechanical parts. And we always talk about robotics aren't as complex as people think. You have your mechanical parts, your computer, and your saw. And you basically get the sensors to communicate with the computer to make the motors do whatever you program them to do. And so that's what these students have been working on. And you can see we have a variety of different things that are being worked on by the students. And I think all the photos are by my students as well. They kind of document what they do, both in an engineering journal, as well as taking photos for either upload into Canvas to track their progress or for presentations. If I go too fast, you can throw something at me. The student was very honest. What's cool about the code is you can do the easy route, which is basically a drag and drop. Some of these students went real deep into the actual script of the code. I thought that was fascinating because it was not required that they did that. They wanted to be technical, so they took it upon themselves to go in and start doing the actual script code. They also divided tasks up, as you can see there. So to maximize that time they had, some were working on coding, some were working on the mechanical portions.
This is my favorite slide.
And then the credit, this is my favorite. This team wanted everyone to know.
Here they were.
They were very detailed. I asked, I said, should we keep this in? She said, absolutely. Let's.
Give them their fame.
Yeah. I do want to note Wolfgang has a hidden talent. He does Mongolian throat singing. In class.
Oh, my. I want to hear that.
No, you don't.
No, I kind of do.
Outstanding.
My fault. The only one that's-
I think so, yeah.
Right.
Students who run this,
I will show a demonstration of this bot. This bot was supposed to go 20 feet and then back up and reverse itself. It's quite fast, so if you see me running around like a crazy person, I apologize. This robot was built and coded by 3 students, Elia Rizzo, Hunter Perryman, and Ryan McKinney. Sorry, Joey, that might be fast.
I mean, so like theirs looks different than mine. So he did a clawbot. She just did what would you call this?
Well, it was supposed to be a Mars rover. It's supposed to look for things on Mars.
Right. And then so like another part of the curriculum was a test bed, which if you hook all the test bed, if you hook all this up, put it all together, you can make it run through the program. It has to go through, test every motor, make sure that it turns, make sure everything opens up. And then there's also sensors on here. So this is an optical sensor. If it detects anything, it opens the quad. If you press the bumper switch, it turns wheel. You click the limit switch, it moves both wheels. And then if there's another one that's moved, they all move. So I told them that I wanted to see like how they coded. Like I just want to see everything run. But then I was like, get creative with it. And then they came up with this. So kids never cease to amaze you.
The great thing about Project Lead the Way is it sets up a curriculum for you to follow, but like we have all been adding our own challenges and stuff into it, and it makes it a little bit more enjoyable for the kids because they can get super creative. There's a lot of resources out there that they can use their computers to look at, like other kids across the nation that have built specific robots, and so they can kind of bounce ideas off of one another and just research different robots with the kids that they can build. So it's pretty cool.
But no flamethrowers.
Not yet.
No,
Okay.
not yet.
That may be a second semester activity.
They keep asking when we get to have like a bot battle, and I'm like, well.
Yeah, that's, and so do these all start from the same kit or do they,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, so all the pieces are all individual, like down to the nuts, the bolts, the screws, gears, everything's all individual. They have to put it all together for
excellent.
I thought it was really neat. Whenever we got our shipment in, it was late, like November. And so the kids were just like, can we dig into them? I'm like, yes, but we need to organize them. And they were so enveloped in like organizing. They just wanted to put their kits together how they wanted them, what was easiest for them to find their parts and their pieces. And so with the help of Kathy Mock, we were able, in my classroom, we were able to get some like toolboxes and some like individual compartment toolboxes where they could organize. And so it's really helped out in my classroom. And then the high school was gracious enough to donate some steel tables to us. And that's been, they have like little lockers on the side. So those really help out. And then these guys have found their own storage. You know, it just works for us, how we like our classroom. So it's come together really well. It was a little bit of a struggle at the beginning, not having our kits, but we have a way that we could go. There's a virtual software that we were able to go onto, and it gave the kids the opportunity to code and then to plug their code into like a virtual reality to see how their robot would have performed had we actually had the kits. And whenever we got our kits, they just took off. Like they were like, I'm digging into this, and I've really been impressed. Because we didn't have the first 2 months to teach them how to build them like we would have been able to. So they figured it out, and it was really great. So,
And I will just commend these three. We were subject to the shipping delays, microchip, all of the national, international issues that we faced. And so we were definitely in a little bit of a panic once school started, because this is our first semester to launch this course. But I can't commend these three enough. They adapted very well. They found benefits of how they could go forward. So I'm excited for second semester. They're going to start with everything fresh. They've been through it a semester. So it will only improve from here. And if you remember last year, we added the app creator, the 8th grade level. This is a 7th grade opportunity. So we're trying to build that middle school opportunity for some of these STEM related.
Do the kits come, do you order a specific kit, or does it just come a box of parts?
It's
And
like base kits and extensions. And
Okay.
things of that nature.
so yeah, like something that the high school was able to gift us, well, not gift, we had to give them back, let us borrow some kits, some VEX kits that they had. And inside their kits, they had remote controls that you could control your robots with. And we had to give those back, but we all think that would be something really nice to have included into the kits, because they didn't come, they're not part of the base kit for our automation and robotics class. So I know I would like to purchase one to have for my kids, so.
so when the kit comes, they have to figure out what they want to do with it.
Yeah.
So hypothetically, it is just a box of parts. And they go,
Yes.
oh,
Yeah,
that's
that's
awesome.
exactly what it is. It's a box of
Lots of
parts.
parts.
That's awesome.
And then will you disassemble and keep these for the next class? Or
Yes.
these
Yeah.
go in a trophy case?
No, well, they get to take a picture of them so they can keep it forever. But then, yeah, they'll have to go and
Okay.
disassemble all of it and put it back in their kits and
Oh,
get ready for.
fantastic.
We get a whole new bunch of kids when we come back in January. So
Okay.
they'll have the opportunity to keep their kits, like in my class, they'll be able to keep the kits the same, or they can change them to meet their needs. So,
Okay. All right. Well, fantastic. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
We put them at the front so they can go.
No, that's great. All
Merry
right.
Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. First up, we got the superintendent's data report.
Yes, and Mark Manus, I noticed that his name is on the screen. Is he on with us?
There
Hello,
there he
Mark.
is.
And he is going to give our group our strategic plan update and where we are in the process.
I'm having trouble hearing, so,
We're ready for you to give us the update on the strategic plan.
right, okay, and you may have to relay any questions you have.
Will do.
Apologies, but, so we have finished, good evening, everybody, first of all, good to see everybody. We have finished the first phase of the strategic plan. We conducted over 80 interviews, one-on-one interviews, a mix of teachers, parents, administration, former or past graduates of Joplin Public Schools. Really, in a strategic fashion, we did a design approach, but also we spent quite a bit of time just making sure we covered every building in Joplin as well, and getting voices from each building and really feel like we have a great start in terms of the input, which is critical when you're building a strategic plan. And also to do it in a strategic fashion. So it's not just random, it's actually a process in place that really allows us to capture voices and categorize those into themes. And I was fortunate to meet with most of you when we were on the ground, and I shared some of those themes with you that we're developing. And the majority of those stayed in place. I'm going to cover some of that with you tonight, just briefly, because I know there's not a lot of time here. But I want to start off by saying, first of all, there's a number of individuals that like the brevity and the approach you use on your class strategic plan. People reference that. But I think one area that we need to improve in is actually having a set of measurements that if we say these things are important, we're going to make sure they're measured. So we're in the process of that, looking at those right now. And the three major areas that really developed as themes, of course, you referred to it in the last strategic plan as student readiness. We can call it academic growth. We'll work on the terminology, but an area in terms of how we measure student growth, what we're doing to achieve that. So as you know, there's a curriculum alignment process taking place. How do we measure that? Well, we measure that through a series of, it could be measurements on a survey with the teachers, with staff to see how we're doing. We're actually going to see results of that along the test scores and things of that nature. The other area that will be part of that student readiness theme goal area will be the establishment of clearly communicated measurements. And we've heard it from the board, we hear it from the public as well. And it's very important to have those consistent measures so we can see how we're doing in terms of student academic growth. It's a very clear message that we heard, and we're going to ensure that that's part of the new strategic plan. And then, of course, to make that happen, to remind you, our whole process is we wanted to find out in that teacher student engagement piece, how we support the teacher in that area and things that would get in the way of teacher being successful with student engagement. So the teacher support piece will be part of that measurement as well, as part of that goal as well. So those are kind of the three areas underneath the student readiness or student academic growth. The second thing we've heard, which shouldn't surprise anybody given the circumstances we are, and this is happening across the country, is the impact that we've had, the stress that's been put on the system through the occurrences of the last year, 2 years, with the impact of COVID and things of that nature in terms of student health, mental health and behavior. You know, as you know, we're on the East Coast as well. It's across the country. This is something everybody is struggling with. And I think that as we look at this theme and goal, we're going to have to set some short-term goals that directly meet the urgency of what's taking place in that area. But at the same time, you know, this is going to be a 3 to 5 year strategic plan. We're going to build in systems that are measurements that take a look at that as well. And what we've asked the leadership team to do, we met with them already in terms of test. What we asked them to do is take a look, a detailed look at everything we're doing right now as addressing the mental health of students and support in that area. Let's look at the resources that are working, how they're effective, and what resources may be needed in addition to that to address what's taking place with our students. So that's the second major goal that's taking place. And I will tell you, across the board through all the stakeholder groups, we've consistently heard stories around this area and how that impacts academic growth. So that's the second theme. And the third goal will not surprise anybody in this room, but I will say we're actually going to address it with measurements this time, which is community engagement and communication. So we know that there's a perception and reality issue in terms, in a lot of people's mind, in terms of Joplin School's quality and how it's perceived. That's one area. There's also the area of connecting the community to the school in a better fashion. There are multiple opportunities for us to improve that in communication engagement area. So the third goal will have measurements around those activities. And I will say this as well, I think this is something that will be a stretch goal for Joplin as we work on the detail of this. Just part of your brand, for lack of a better term, part of the thing that people say about you is that you offer options that no one in the area offers. You have an advantage with the programs that you have, Franklin Check on your campus and things of that nature. I think we should look for ways to build on it. In Springfield, when I was the strategic plan director there, we of course created what we call SBS choice schools, which have now taken off. They have, I think, 8 or 9 different options of choice schools. I'm not advocating for that in this case, but it's everything from an environmental science school to an ag school to a med school. They have a lot of opportunities there. I think, and once again, I'm not advocating for that type of approach necessarily, but I think we need to explore innovative ways to build on what is already a good existing brand advantage that you have in your school district. So that's part of that community engagement, communication piece that I think offers us an opportunity for growth. So those three areas: student readiness, the mental health, student behavior piece that impacts student readiness, obviously, and then the community engagement piece. Of course, language will change around those as we develop the goals. Our goal is still to have a sheet that has a goal, the key measures that we're going to look at, and then the action plans. I think the area that we can make some improvement on from the last strategic plan is to have more specified goals. So that's measured and we can communicate those to the community as well. That's a nice accountability piece. I think if we're going to have community engagement as one of our 3 goals, then that accountability piece will be even more important to embed. So that's what we heard through all those interviews and discussions, obviously, with the board, which I was pleased to get the opportunity to spend time with you. And that's the direction we're headed right now. I want to talk briefly about next steps because it's very important. The next phase will be very important to the completion of the plan. First of all, in January, I'll move forward because I think it's urgent with a comprehensive communications plan. I don't need additional input to do that. So our team will put a communications plan together. We will make recommendations. It will be very detailed so that the thing we're talking about in terms of community engagement and communication, you'll have a plan in place. There will obviously be some discussion that you'll need to have around what assets you bring to bear to meet those goals and to meet the communication plan needs. But I don't think there's anybody at that table that hasn't expressed the desire to improve communication, community engagement. So there's no really need for us to wait on that to move ahead. So in January, I'll talk to Dr. Moss whenever is the best appropriate time to bring that forward to the board. We can present a detailed communication plan that will set, I think, the stage for communicating the strategic plan as well. So that will occur in January. The other thing that I think is very important now, since we've got these categories, and as a piece of this community engagement, I'm recommending that we move forward on finding a way to get better input from the community. I think we're going to have a demonstration on thought exchange tonight. I know school districts that have utilized this particular approach effectively to get input. That's going to be an option. We're going to have to figure out some method of consistently getting community input beyond what we used to do with a lot of town halls where people would come. To be honest, that's usually, those are not very effective consistently because people have difficulty getting to these types of things now. And of course, we've also learned last year that there could be some outside forces that impact that. So how we're going to get community engagement and input consistently with Joplin, honestly, I think this is a great area of needed improvement. So that will be embedded in the communications plan. We'll just need to figure out what the board's willingness to go with the thought exchanges. That's, I think, a great tool, but obviously that's something you need to discuss. The other piece is making sure that we do get additional community input to the broader community on these strategic initiatives. So hopefully it's thought exchange or some other method. We could recommend doing some surveys, posting those online, but we want to make sure we have an opportunity for broader public engagement and promoting the opportunity to come on and share thoughts around these key themes. So that will be occurring in January and February as well. Our team hopes to work with leadership to finish the strategic plan draft in late February so that we could do the refinement in March to complete it by April. So that's the timeline right now. We're on track for that. I'm very happy that we did the input piece first. I'm a big believer in that because we heard the voices of the community first in strategic fashion. So I think we're in good shape in terms of where we're headed on the key goals. I'll be glad to answer any questions. I was saying earlier, I've had trouble sometimes with the microphones, but I have to admit it's also my hearing. I'm not happy to have to admit that, but this is reality. But I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have about our process or what we've heard at this point.
Any questions from the board at this time? All right, I think we're ready to start in January and hit the ground running, and excited to see the results and what comes out in April.
Good. And I'll be glad to answer any questions. You can feel free, I think Dr. Moss, share my contact information. If you want to have any follow-up, any member of the board want to have a follow-up with me, let me know. And I'll be glad to go into a little more detail if you need to.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is our construction update, and I see Aaron is with us tonight. And Chad, there's Chad. Oh, it's all the Aaron show. Okay.
He's gonna say better.
I see how that works tonight.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, first off, I want to thank Chad and thank Dave for the great weather we've had. They've been in charge the whole time, so it's been awesome. I think we've got some photos. So speaking of the great weather, we poured our second third of the slab on grade today, this morning. It started at 2 a.m. Slab pour went great. We have awesome weather for curing. It's just couldn't have been better. So that cuts loose. Well, I'll just talk about this. So that's a view from the remaining hill along Main Street, looking back towards the west. Kind of a panoramic view. So we've got both steel. Our structure, our FEMA structure on the right is complete. It's 100% welded off. The only thing we're lacking is the FEMA penetrations, so doors and HVAC, obviously. That is also the area that we poured this morning. So it's completely around the shelter as well as inside the shelter. And also, as you can see, we've got second floor decking started. And that is awesome. We've actually got our second floor slab pour scheduled for January 12th. So we're going to need a little help from Chad and Dave on that. There are precautions to take if it is cold enough to freeze, but hopefully we won't be in that situation. Slab looks great. There's another view from the west looking east. And we've started on the kitchen area. That's actually the deep footing at the dock and also where your grease interceptor goes. Also, something notable is your asphalt on your loop road will start Thursday of this week. Taking advantage of the great weather, we're not going to pour any of the parking lot. It's just going to be the loop road, and it's just going to be the base. That loop road is There's different areas of thickness, but 4 and 2 inches. And we're going to do the base course, wait until the end of the project, and then do the final course over the whole thing so it looks great. Another panoramic view of the job site. Bar joist, that's been a notable discussion lately. They're still anticipating somewhere around March 1st. We're hoping to get that improved to about mid-February. Fingers crossed. You never know about delays, but March 1st is what they're telling us still right now. Any questions about Dover?
Well, with the weather you've had, I mean, how far ahead of schedule are you right now?
I would say right now, currently, we're about 2 weeks ahead of schedule. So
Very good.
we've been doing well on footings. Speaking of footings, we anticipate if the weather holds out into next week, into Christmas week, we'll be done by Christmas on all of our footings.
Wow.
And that's awesome. Awesome, awesome. We just need the bar joists to come in sooner rather than later, and we'll be in great shape.
The second floor are you going to try to do that all at once?
Yes.
So, okay, that'll be all at once.
Yeah. It's really not that many square foot. It's about 20,000 square feet, which we do that every floor.
Right. So Chad needs to learn how to do that good weather dance better.
Yes, absolutely. At January 12th.
We'll get him a new pair of flip-flops.
Please do. Please do. Any other questions for me?
Sounds awesome. It looks good.
The project is going extremely well, knock on wood. Very nice.
And when you're done with the footings, then is that the last, I'll say, opportunity for the rock contingency?
Yes, absolutely. Dave and I just talked about that, and Chad. Really, these deep footings at the dock, the pictures you saw, they're the last ones.
Okay.
And they're the deepest on the job. So what we saw today, there was no rock present. So it's a good sign.
All the footings are already dug and everything. It's ready to pour, correct?
They were still digging out today.
A little bit.
I think they're going to try to pour Thursday.
Good news.
Yeah, great news.
Merry Christmas to the district.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for the update.
Okay.
programs and help with them as well. Obviously wanted to prepare ourselves for entry into the Central Ozark Conference beginning in 2018-19. As I'm sure you're aware, the COC is an incredibly competitive conference, and joining that conference meant that we needed to make some changes to be able to compete within that conference and then meet the expectations. Explain that clearly. So Again, somewhere we lost a few of the slides, but in our non-cut sports pre and post co-op comparison, we looked at the middle school participation percentage going from 7th to 8th grade, and also the high school percentage of retention going from 8th grade to freshman. And in each of those areas, they did improve. So if we look at girls cross country participants, our pre-co-op middle school retention rate, it did decrease a little bit for our girls, but it increased when they got to high school, going from 8th grade to their high school years. So, I don't necessarily have an explanation for that. I do think some of these numbers from COVID, 4 of the years of our post-cooperative years were affected by COVID. There was with at least 2 years that were affected by that. So those numbers could be skewed a little bit from what we would see 4 more years down the road. Our boys cross country percentage of retention from middle school increased dramatically. We went from 89.5% of 7th graders going to 8th grade prior to the co-op to 118.9% going from 7th to 8th grade. So we actually gained on average students going from 7th to 8th grade. Very similar numbers with our football participants. Middle school retention rate was 93.8 prior to the co-op and jumped up to almost 119%. So we were gaining them again from 7th to 8th grade. And then going from 8th grade to our freshman year, 67% retention rate prior to the co-op to 90% post-co-op. So we're getting almost 90% of our kids going from their 8th grade year to their freshman. Our wrestling numbers actually have improved, as I mentioned earlier, and very similar, in terms of numbers. Our pre-co-op high school retention percentage was 38% and is 51.9% post-co-op. So again, I think those are positive numbers. In terms of some recent middle school highlights within our program, our 8th grade football team has enjoyed 2 really good years. They have went 11-1 as 7th and 8th graders. They were undefeated as 8th graders. Their only loss was to Nixa as 7th graders. It was a really close game, about 3 points. And this year we went to Nixa and beat them 28-0, able to shut them out. So I think that shows that not only we're being competitive, but there was improvement that took place within that team. Our 7th grade volleyball team finished 4th place in the 2021 COC tournament. Middle school wrestling just concluded their tournament last Saturday. We had 2 individual champions, 1 runner-up, 4 third-place finishes. One of those third-place finishes was our young lady that was wrestling, so she did very well. 8th grade girls cross-country finished 3rd in the 2021 COC meet, including a 2nd-place individual finish. Our 8th boys had a 2nd-place individual in the most recent meets. 7th grade boys cross-country finished 4th. And our 8th grade boys basketball team finished 3rd place in the COC tournament. And anytime you're finishing in the top 3 in basketball in our conference, you've accomplished something.
It's hard to, when you're looking at how is this translating to high school, it's hard to put your finger on exactly why, whether, the reason was 100% to co-op. Most likely there was a lot of factors that contributed to it. But if you look at, some of the things that have been going on at the high school since we started the middle school co-op, our number tracking, the data we have goes back to 2009. This fall at the high school, we had 379 fall athletes, including cheer and dance. That's the largest number we have on our spreadsheet in the fall. And looking at winter numbers, they've been up over the last 4 years too since we started the co-op. Is that why? I can't 100% say for sure, but I think it's a contributing factor at least. We had 26 freshman girls try out for basketball at the high school level. This year, that's the biggest number that anybody ever knows of. And so we feel like if we can start stacking those numbers together and retain those kids, that, we've got a chance to do this, to really change the thoughts of our program. 142 participants in high school football this year is the largest number since 2009. 53 freshman football players participated this year. That's the largest number we have on our spreadsheet. Our volleyball team won a district championship for the first time since 1996. Our boys cross country team has been to state the last 2 years for the first time in school history. Our girls cross country team won a CMC conference championship last year for the first time in school history. And so there's more things on there and, a lot of success stories. Our football team has probably had the best 4-year run. That's Joplin High School, Parkwood and Memorial, excluded. And so there's a lot of great things going on. Exactly how much does the co-op have to do with that? I can't say 100%, but we do believe it's a contributing factor. And, anecdotally, if you ask our coaches, which we've done preparing for this, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Is it working? I didn't talk to one that told me no, we need to change it. So they feel like it's a good thing and putting our programs in the best possible way to have success. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. Looking at just some areas to improve. One of the things that, that we're looking at is obviously we want to continue to increase our participation for all programs while maintaining those high retention rates. We want our cake and be able to eat it too. We want to keep those retention rates, but continue to look for ways to increase our participation. Continued focus on attaining and retaining quality coaches for our middle school programs, I think is important. I've heard Matt say a lot of times the number one job that we can do is try to hire quality coaches and keep them here for our kids. That consistency builds success over time. We need to develop a strategy to increase our girls wrestling participation numbers. I think that's a booming program right now in a lot of places, and I think there are some girls that would certainly be interested, and continue to find new and better ways to reach into our youth programs and encourage participation. I think our football program has done some neat things with going down to the elementary schools and greeting them in the mornings, and our flag football program and our high school basketball coaches have been in the summertime have been hosting youth clinics and various things, and I think those are things that we can build upon to continue to reach into our youth and get them, a part of the fold of being an Eagle. And then finally, this was an excerpt that was written from one of our middle school cross-country athletes this past fall. And I do have enough copies for everybody of the full thing if you would like to see it. And it's a really cool thing to read.
And I'm not so certain we didn't put a full copy at their seats already.
Awesome. And reading it, you just get a neat snapshot of their personality, I think. But this was the last paragraph, and you can see she talks about bouncing back and forth between some various sports when she was younger, and she found cross country. And that last line, she says, "Remember this: your sport should not just be about great athleticism. And if you stink at it, that's okay." That's great, actually. It means there's room for great improvement. I think what a positive way to look at it, and I think that speaks to our cross country coaches and the job that they do in building our kids' confidence in cross country. She said my first mile was awful. I have something in common with her because my last mile was awful. But then she says, find that one sport that pushes you not only to be a great athlete, but a great person. Go find your people. And I think that embodies what we're really trying to do, open up these opportunities and experiences for our kids and let them go find their people and their niche. And one final thing that I would say is just I want to give a thank you to our middle school principals and assistant principals and secretaries and our shuttle bus drivers. Without those people, the way that we're built, we would not be able to do what we need to do. Getting those kids to practices and keeping things organized, out on the fringes. They do a tremendous job, and we're indebted to all those people for the work that they do. So I apologize for some of the slides not looking the way that they reverted back somewhere, but I thank you. And can I answer any questions?
I want to thank you for being here tonight, Kyle and Matt. Great job. The consolidation of our middle school athletics when it occurred was something that created quite a bit of debate, and I think that debate continues today some. And I just want you to know these participation numbers are encouraging to me. The fact that we are at the numbers that we're at, I think, is in part a reflection of the size of our district. Mm-hmm. But my hope is that we will, and I've told Matt this in person many times, that we will see high school, we will see middle school athletics at each school again someday. I don't know when that's going to be. And maybe it starts with the ability to field 2 teams at the middle school level. We had 2 teams when I was in junior high. I think athletics plays a huge role in education and personal growth. And while I'm really glad to see things are improving and things are better. I hope that we will challenge ourselves to find a day when maybe we have a red team and a blue team as opposed to a, varsity and JV, to where Joplin is producing 2, and then maybe we'll get to 3 at some point. Planting the seed for growth is all I'm doing. Not suggesting change is necessary, but when we see these numbers, it's clear that some kids who want to participate are not able to because we've got better numbers. And that's always going to be the case. And so I applaud what you all have done, and I hope that we'll keep striving to improve what we have and make it better.
Thank you. There is no limit on better, and we continue to look for ways
There
to
isn't.
make it to make it better.
Well stated, thank you.
Well, thank you both for being here. I agree with Sherrick in the sense that, there's a lot of great things going on from top to bottom. It sounds like across the board, and that we do want to have an opportunity to give as many people as possible the ability to participate in our athletics. But it's also very important, as you know, to be what you're doing from elementary school all the way to high school, because we're kind of seeing some of the benefits of what happened 5-10 years ago and more of an alignment. There's districts very close to us who've done that for a very long time, and they've been very successful with that model. So I think that's paying off finally for us. So thanks for being committed to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Appreciate you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Now, don't go anywhere.
Okay, Shelley, you're up next with health and dental, followed by financial statements.
Okay, we just finished our 5th month of the fiscal year, and we spent a little over $3 million of our $7.4 million budget in the health fund, which is about 41% of the total budget. The summary this time, there's not a whole lot different. Last time, I mentioned that we'd received some rebates. So if you go to that 3rd page there, back one, there is, it looks like prescription claims are a lot more this time, but it was just because of that $104,000 rebate that we received last month. Overall, it's very similar in total cost that we had spent about a year ago, and our overall balance didn't fluctuate a whole lot from last month. And the dental plan continues to be just moving along as we anticipated. Does anybody have any questions on the health and dental? Okay, on the financial statements then, this month, Eric, if you'll go to that condensed financial page. We did receive, I mentioned last month that we had the ESSER 2 funds that came in, $8.5 million. You'll see those down there in the federal year-to-date column went up considerably from last month. And that's reflective of that. Overall, there's not any other major issues, though that was the big thing that happened in November. But I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Looks good. Thank you. All right. Next up, we do not have any public comments this evening. That takes us then to our consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, motion by Sherrick, second by Riley. Discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay. Consent agenda pass. Thank you. Regular agenda. Shelley.
Yes, and we have Joe Kinder with us tonight from Steeple. Joe, can you hear us?
Hello, Joe.
Hello.
So I'm going to turn it over to Joe to kind of discuss what's happening with our bonds right now. If he can explain a little bit of what it's, can you hear me, Joe?
Joe, she's going to turn it over to you. You can let us know what's happening with the bonds and then what you want to share with us.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate you allowing me to be here virtually. I've been on the phone trying to get answers as quickly and as fastly and furiously as I can on what's going on right now. I was hoping to be here with final rates to report to you on your bond sale. I made the determination and recommendation last night late to Shelley and Dr. Moss that we postpone the sale while we find an adequate way to move forward. And essentially what has happened is that we've been informed of a new condition to close if we use the Missouri Direct Deposit Program. That includes a certificate of compliance that we have no way of knowing what liability and what risks that exposes the district to, and exposes the board and the administration to as well at the same time. So we are in a position where we didn't feel comfortable moving forward with a deal that was in the Missouri Direct Deposit Program, which, for those of you who've never heard that term before, that is a credit enhancement that the state of Missouri provides to the Missouri Health Education Facilities Authority that essentially intercepts your state foundation formula monies for 12 months of the year as they come in and the amounts needed to pay next year, the following fiscal year's debt service. So starting March of this year, for instance, March of 2022, you'll start getting your state aid intercepted for your fiscal 2023 bond. It's a nice program that provides a slight boost to your interest rate in terms of lower RMOS, but certainly not one that is worth signing a certificate that we don't yet have any answers on that might expose the trick to legal liability that could cause you to be in a position where you're potentially spending tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees. To be honest with you folks, I just have no answers. This is typically not how our industry works. We typically don't get news at 3:30 p.m. the night before a bond sale that our world has been turned over, things have changed completely. Typically, we move at geologic timescales. So we're trying to get answers, but in the meantime, we do have a good market for doing bond sale. And I think we come up with a pretty good solution. And that's the resolution we put in front of you. So we're still going to have a resolution that authorizes the issuance, sale, and delivery of bonds for the purpose of refinancing the 2012 bonds. The difference is, for now, what we're looking at is one of two options that both actually, because it is such a good market this week, save more money than what we showed you last month, the month prior, at over $2.9 million, we think, assuming rates stay around. And so I think it's something that we need to very. Of course, you have the option to wait, not pass the resolution, and wait until January or February and see what this certificate of compliance entails and what we would need to do to make sure we're compliant with it, and do a true cost benefit analysis to answers that we don't have right now, or we can move forward with this. Again, my recommendation is to move forward. We've got, in the words of our tickets and sales staff, we've got supply that is far short of demand this week in particular for bonds. So as investors close up their calendar year, they have money left to allocate toward bond issues this year. And they want to allocate that money this year. And so we have rates that have stayed low. We have market that is eager for bonds, and we're in a position where I think that moving forward with a sale that would refinance bonds and save as much or more money than what we showed you last month, if we were in last month's market, I think is a prudent course. And then for the next time we would go out and issue bonds, I would think that we would have answers on what that certificate of compliance means. That is something that is coming from the state treasurer. And again, I just do not have adequate answers for you on that, and to be able to make a determination that we can use the Missouri Direct Deposit Program. And I think the difference between the Missouri Direct Deposit, I think our indicators are showing us that the difference between the Direct Deposit Program and not using it is, maybe $100,000, $150,000, not quite as strong as what we initially thought as we started digging into this and getting feedback from investors and our salesmen and our syndicators. So we're giving up that, but as you can tell from last month, going from potentially saving $2.8 million to this month being able to maybe save, if we use the direct deposit program, almost $3.1 million. It does not take a lot of market movement to eat up $150,000 worth of savings. So in other words, we've gained $200,000 of savings simply by small movements downward in yields. And the interest rate risk that the board would assume by waiting could easily eat up any benefit we would get from using the Missouri Direct Deposit Program. if we determine that there are no risks other than making sure that we're compliant with a couple of issues that are put in front of us. But again, we're trying to get answers from the state treasurer, from the attorney general, from the Missouri Health and Education Authority. Not that you need to hear my sob story, but I tallied up my phone minutes today, and I spent 466 minutes on the phone since 6 a.m. this morning. So we are working diligently and hard to get those answers for you. The meantime, we've been trying to determine an alternate path forward. I think we have a good. So that's what this parameters resolution is for. And what the difference with the parameters resolution is, it authorizes us to conduct a public sale in the absence of holding a board meeting, as long as we meet certain parameters that are set forth in the resolution. In other words, we have to, the results of the sale has to result in a certain amount of savings, come in below a certain interest rate, and we can't then magically change cost of issuance. We caps the cost of issuance. And we think we've put you on a spot. You'll see that the cost of issuance is $175,000. That's much, much higher than we think it will be. But one of the options is what's called bond insurance. And that bond insurance comes with lower interest rates, but it also comes with fees. Right now, it's not something that we're contemplating because we think that moving forward without the insurance would be just as valuable, because you as a district have a very high credit on your own. So the direct deposit program or insurance would be an additional minute benefit, and they both come with costs right now. The insurance is of course a fee that you have to pay, and the direct deposit program is risks that we have no idea how to mitigate, nor do we have any idea how to identify. So again, my recommendation is, because the market is nice right now, because we have investor interest, and we've been speaking with potential buyers of your bonds all day today, that we move forward with an alternate path without using the direct deposit program, but leaving the option open to use insurance. We're trying to get a bid for insurance right now. It would come in better than what we've seen in the past. We might be interested in using that, but I think right now the issue is to use your strong credit rating that you currently have and go out and save hopefully more than $2.9 million, execute on the financing and lock in rates in this good market that we have in front of us. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions. And again, this is not something that you absolutely have to do. This is an option, because we're going to make a good number of places for there in a position where we can wait and try to get more answers. But we want to make sure we were doing our best to problem solve at the time we did.
Thank you. I would move that we approve regular agenda item number G1 as presented.
All right. So motion by Sherrick, second by Mike. Discussion? Riley?
So I guess my first question would be, in terms of just finding out about this, is this something that's that new to the state? Yesterday.
Yes, yesterday, late afternoon.
Because I'll be very frank, I don't have a good grasp of what that looks like in terms of.
I think that we're offering to make Stiefel our agent for purposes of accomplishing this sale within these sliding parameters, if you will. And I did note section 201B, I think it was, I saw the 175 expense limitation that we are making ourselves susceptible to, and he just explained that was a conservative estimate, meaning he hopes it will be less. And the authority that we would be granting them would be to say not less than 2.9, and we hope it would be more than that. And so that's kind of what we came together to do, and that's why I moved as quickly as I did. I don't understand it either beyond that. I mean, I think we're all kind of in a state of flux.
My comment was just because I am limited in that, so.
As am I.
I have no good understanding of that.
So how hard is it to get an answer on that? I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult of a thing.
Yeah, I think that the action item is either tonight or wait till our next board meeting, and we're concerned that changes in interest rates between now and then might.
Okay.
Yeah, but the next Fed meeting is the end of January. We have a board meeting before that.
Yeah, I think what the whole issue on the Missouri direct deposit deal, I don't know if you're aware of this, but what he was talking about, there was a compliance certification that came out by, I think the treasurer of Missouri sent it out, but it's for Dr. Moss to have to sign. It says that the district is in compliant with the directives received from the Missouri Attorney General on December the 7th, 2021. So I mean, this just came out Monday, I think is when, and related to the enforcement of public health orders, or will become compliant no later than December 23rd and will remain compliant with said directives. But they're not sure what all directives are going to be coming out, and that's going to make us have to be compliant with. And that's where the angst on Stifel's part of making somebody sign this when we don't even know what all that's coming into
Yeah,
play.
what legal liability that exposes us to, as well as we're already hearing rumor of this getting tied up in court because of proper jurisdiction, and it could hold us back for a long time. And we're already looking at more savings tonight than what we had earlier. So again, I don't think it's a risk our district wants to take when we're already looking at greater savings.
And so what they're doing, that's the Attorney General is tying this back to the recent rulings related to COVID and all the restrictions people have thrown out throughout the state. That's the hook on this, right?
It was just,
Okay.
just issued.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what we were made aware of late yesterday.
Yeah.
So we've been scrambling to try to find out what that
All right.
means,
I'm
as
with you,
is
Sheriff.
everybody else.
And is there a timing limitation in this resolution? I didn't see.
That's what the hook is.
There isn't, but, you know, to be completely frank, there's still a lot of dominoes that have to fall in the right place for this to get done. So if it doesn't get done by the end of the calendar year, which likely that clock runs out on Monday, and, you know, I can talk a little bit more about, well, I'll just go ahead and tell you, the state auditor requires a certain amount of time for them to register the bonds, which we have to do. And we lose a lot of the value of going into the market today. Arguably, we pay a penalty talking to our folks, our economists, and everything. If we we sell bonds into a calendar year and close them in a different calendar year. So
Yeah,
really, if we cannot price this by Monday, the 20th, I think that the window is closed. One of my many phone calls today was to Paul Harper, who is the general counsel of the state auditor's office. He had promised me that he would try to get back this afternoon to me with answers. He was unable. He's got to talk to multiple people inside of the state auditor's office on time for registration. They typically require 7 business days. So I'm trying to confirm with him that if we were to come back as late as Monday, if we could get everything in place, because we're talking about a new set of documents from bond counsel and a bunch of other things that we've got to get done. You know, this.
Yeah, but the point of it is this isn't an interest rate issue. What Shelley mentioned, this isn't going to get solved for months.
Probably honestly Monday's the last day.
And so, Sheriff, I think you're spot on it.
We've got eyes from investors, the maximum amount of eyes possible. And if we can't get this done by that time, my suggestion would be that we will just wait until your January board meeting, because I think that that's the window that we're in. I think the purpose for the parameters in my mind.
All right, so if I can summarize where we're at, because we got a motion, we're ready to go, is if you can get this done within the next 4 or 5 days, then you would recommend it. Otherwise, you'll likely not recommend it. We'll be talking about it again in January. And if we do something now, waiting for the direct deposit, that could be tied up in litigation further, and you're going a route that avoids that potential litigation.
That is
Yes.
true.
Okay, very good.
Let's vote.
Let's vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, okay, that motion passes. Okay, so go make us some money.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shelley, thank you for the clarification on that. That helped tremendously.
All right, change order. We've got, all right, proposed change orders. We got 2 of them going.
Okay, Dave's up here and we've got our experts in the galleys in case we need them. And we're going to talk about a couple of change orders at Dover Hill to help us move along. And we finally got our information on Trench Rock, and that's one of them. And then also something we had to do for MoDOT's purposes down at the corner, so.
My intent is not to take all the money that you just voted to help the district out with. So we had two change orders. One of those will make a contractual change with Crossland. The other one does not have a contractual impact. And so the first thing is a signal loop and box that with the new turn lane at North Main and Murphy Boulevard, with that going in upon MoDOT's inspection, once that was opened up, that they required that we replace the box and the loop that was there tied in with that signal. And so that was an unanticipated and unsolicited thing that we were not planning on. And so that is a change order of $13,536.07. The better news is for the trench rock. We anticipated that we were going to be seeing the trench rock we dug for the footings as well as for the utilities. And so that came out actually less than we thought that we would anticipate. And so that is a change order of $67,831.75 out of a $150,000 budget. So the balance of that is $82,168.25. As he alluded to just a while ago, we feel fairly confident that we are past that. We are limited now with the amount of footings that we have left to do. So we don't see that that will incur any additional cost likely. And so look for these two change orders to be approved by you all this evening. And are there any questions?
I'd make a motion to approve as presented on the change orders.
All right. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Riley. All right. Any discussion?
Dave, I have a question, not about this in particular, but just wondered how far away are we from the disposal of the double wide? At
Kelsey Norman?
Yes.
We are, all of the utilities except for the electricity have been severed there at that. We have a little bit of furniture that was left that we were making sure we didn't want inside the existing building. We'll be pulling that out to put into our auction facility. And I hope that within the next couple of 3 weeks, depending on through the holiday time, that we will get that put on govdeals.com to be ready. I've already had a couple of people approach me that are interested, and so we're hoping for a good turnout for that, for those folks that are interested in that.
Very good. Thank you.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Sounds like a Christmas purchasing opportunity.
There you go. Very good.
All right. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. All right, next up, the consider safe return in-person instruction community of service plan, continuity of service plan.
Yes, so every 6 months, as part of our ESSER 3 requirements, we are to review this, and the board has been involved in these along the way. We did have our required stakeholder meeting on December 1st. It wasn't a huge group of participants, but a nice cross-section of many of our stakeholders, including school staff, parents, community members, agency folks, and so forth. So we had a good meeting. Some changes were suggested from that group. I also shared in your board packet the case rates as of December 6th and said that I would update you with today's rates. We have 8 employees as of today that are positive, with 17 students, 10 of which are bus riders. Our county and our city numbers are rocking along about the same as they were last week when I put the report together. We recommend the Board of Education consider the plan revisions as presented, with the expectation that the district, in conjunction with our board, will revisit the plans, implementation as the school year proceeds, and also the amended MSHA protocols that we included. And if you like, I can walk you through the highlights of those changes. You've had those in your packet. They are small but mighty changes. On page 3, we articulated a bit more for clarification how our sanitizing is going in each building, and you see that in red. And then on page 6, we didn't notice a change, but I did want to point out, because I know this has been an interest of the board, that page 6 is where we talk about the CDC order as opposed to recommendation that masks will be worn on student at all school transportation by students and staff, regardless of their vaccination status. That is not a recommended change, but I know that's an area of interest, so that you'll find that on page 6. On page 7, a change that was suggested by our parents, and we are supporting this at this time due to the success we've had with our COVID numbers, is that we're going to start opening our buildings up to our classroom parties and looking at ways to do that as safely as we can. So that is articulated for you on page 7. And then finally, our parents in particular just requested some clarification and definition as to what we were talking about in our narrative for learning during intermittent absences. So Sarah put some additional wording in there that clarifies that for our readers. And then our MISHA protocol is on a separate document. And Matt, would you like to talk us through that? Because given the Cole County judge's order, then came some guidance from MISHA of what they are now backing off of because it was health department recommendations they were following.
I'll give you the highlights. I'd be happy to answer any questions after that to fill in any gaps. But, from the very beginning of the pandemic, MISHA's guidance has been to follow the recommendations of your local health department. And so, with the Cole County ruling and the AG letter, that's changed a little bit. So MISHA's recommendation is now to follow the guidance of your school board or your local school governance. And so that's kind of what has led us to this. So there's a recommendation there about how we want to continue to handle close contacts and COVID positives. Now, with the COVID positive student athlete, we don't have any leeway in that. MISHA still has their return to play protocol in effect for those positives. So they're still making that decision for us, but the decision regarding close contacts is left up to us. And so, kind of like what we wanted to do in August, I'm recommending that we allow close contacts who are asymptomatic to continue to compete in practice and in competitions, which is now allowable under MISHA regulations if you so approve.
Matt, I have a question. I read that document. I may have misread it, but is it now if a student is positive, they're now basically 17 days out with the 7-day return? Okay.
That's roughly what it is.
Yeah.
Yes. They have to be isolated for 10 days. And after that 10 days, if they're asymptomatic with doctor's approval, which, is very important with the myocarditis and that type of thing, they can begin that 5-step process, which would take you a minimum of 7 days to get through that. So yes, you're looking at 17 days total.
I recommend I move that we approve the SRCSP revisions as presented, with the expectation that the district, in conjunction with the Board of Education, will revisit the plan's implementation as the school year proceeds and situations warrant.
Second.
All right. So motion by Sherrick, second by Riley. Discussion?
So I think I have a couple of questions. So what is the role of our local health department now? Obviously, it's changed, but can you provide us some information on that?
Well, I think some of that's a little bit in question as it pertains to the school. You are the elected officials, so you can still make those all necessary rules as the statute states. Our local health department is still someone that we can call. It's still someone that can make recommendations, but not mandates to us. And they can also inform us of what's happening in our city or our county. They do still look at communicable diseases. And we're not just talking about COVID, we're talking about other things that could potentially isolate a student. But I think this is just saying that in some districts, not our own, because the board has been very proactive in approving our plans, and we've always wanted to put those in front of you. Some districts were simply relying on what the health department said, and that was their plan. And I think that's more what the Cole County ruling was aimed at, was the authority of the health department to make those mandates and make those rules for districts, unlike what you have been doing as our elected officials and approving our plans all along.
So is it the crux of the argument that because they're not elected officials, then the weight has to come to the board because they are elected?
That's my understanding.
So they'll still data collect. I know there are some health departments across the state who are no longer doing anything related to COVID.
Right.
And so
I have
didn't
not,
know.
yeah, I have not been informed that they won't still data collect. And I'm seeing on our dashboard pages with the city and county that those numbers are being updated.
So if we have a positive case within a classroom, I think typically we used to call or notify the health department. They would reach
Yes.
out to the parents that we provide those contacts for.
Yes.
Is that still the process now, or is
Yes,
that more?
as far as I know, that is still the process. We have not been informed otherwise. And when we have a positive, we are notifying them.
As far as my understanding is employees, I can't speak to students as much, but our local health departments have not changed their procedures at this point. This is my understanding. I've not been updated.
Okay.
And if we do get notification, I'll let you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think either that falls on our shoulders or it stays with the health department, and I assume it's up to them. I don't know that, but that's what it seems like to me. But there are a couple of places in the plan that still refers to the health department. And so if I could draw your attention to that. So we'll still identify close contacts with the health department. We'll keep that in place.
Yes, unless we're notified otherwise.
On page 6, I would recommend the board take another look at the updated masking recommendations. The entire reason why there was masking was because at one point there was the recommendation and the mandate from the health department that the city of Joplin would be wearing masks, and that to some degree happened within the school as well. But are we still encouraging students to situationally mask during times, and it's listed there, entering the buildings until they're seated, when cohort groups are mixed, when transitioning between classes, and are we still encouraging staff to situationally mask during times that they're in close contact with students or colleagues? And if we're not, I would take that out of the plan. And then that's the last bullet on page 6 before the improved ventilation. It talks about quarantining students, which if I'm understanding the resolution or the decision correctly, we're no longer requiring quarantines for students who are not ill. So I guess my question would be, why do we still have that in there on page 6? It's that last bullet on page 6 before the improved ventilation.
So what you're saying where it says students and staff are identified as close contact and instructed to quarantine, if our health department is no longer instructing people to quarantine, would we want to remove that?
Correct.
I guess along with that, Brian, my concern is that the current ruling was, and I wrote this down, was that the order said that we would cease tracking close contact. That's from the Attorney General of Missouri. So my question is as I read through this in page 6, this doesn't line up with what the recent ruling is.
The recent ruling was talking about health departments. It has no jurisdiction on what you as a school board choose.
But it said as a school district, the order said you will cease tracking close contact. That was what in the judge's written opinion.
For the health departments. And
For
then
the
the Attorney
schools.
generalized that to districts. So without a vote of our elected officials, which is you as a school board, that could be the choice. But there's a huge argument right now whether the Attorney General actually had the jurisdiction to paint a broad brush to what you're able to do as a school board member. If you guys decide to change that wording, we're not going to object to that. But it's totally up to your elected officials because there's a lot of statutory responsibility that you have not given up to the Attorney General because of the Cole County case. And And the MSBA sent a list out, which I think I forwarded to the board, saying all the statutory authority that still rests with you, regardless of what the Attorney General said about it.
Yeah, and so based on that, I mean, I personally would say, look, let people wear a mask if they voluntarily want to. But I mean, we're turning into, years of 15 days to slow the spread. And this is like part of life now. And I don't know, and I haven't known what the purpose of a person, one of our children wearing a mask on our school bus serves. And they spend the entire day together. And I think you said early on, when we started this discussion, that the level of cases here is extremely small. I don't even know what the 0.000 is at this point in time, but
We've done very well.
But I'm still morally and over concerned with our children's mental well-being, their emotional well-being, their ability to learn, and I'm really concerned that getting back to a piece of normalcy, with all things considered, is really paramount to helping our kids succeed. I'm very concerned about that. And so I personally would, I would make a motion that outside of the very first bullet point on page 6, that we strike the rest of them.
There's
We
others
have a
too.
motion on the table in
Yep.
a second. Are we going to vote on that, or what are
This
we
is,
doing?
this is a potential amendment.
Amendment, I'm sorry, I said.
This is an amendment to the primary motion.
So you have page 9, that talks about contact tracing, which, again, from my perspective, it could probably be eliminated, at least the parts that say instructed to quarantine, yada, 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 or is recommended by the local health department. And then on page 10, again, the third bullet, students and staff who are identified as close contacts and instructed to quarantine, that obviously doesn't belong in there. And then that last bullet, all individuals are encouraged to follow the guidance from the health department and fully cooperate. And it's been determined they no longer have a legal authority to say that. So I'm not sure why we'd want to approve that. So I know, in my opinion, this doesn't, I think as John was saying, doesn't really line up with the newest information.
Brett,
So-
can you, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
can you clarify on page 9 if you would keep anything on page 9
Well, if,
and what part?
I don't know. I think that's maybe a discussion for the board. I don't know for sure. Definitely not the part about instructed to quarantine and recommended by the
Where is
local
that
health
on
department.
page
So
9?
that's
I'm
the
not
second
finding
bullet
that.
and the third bullet on page 9 on the right-hand side.
Thank you.
Okay.
And again, the reason I asked about contact tracing, because I don't know what the role of our local health department is now. I don't know if we're taking on some of that responsibility or if they're still, there's just, I don't know. I don't know enough, I guess.
Okay, so there's,
So for our operation, what you're saying is what we are removing, because students have always been able to come back as close contacts. So what we're removing is having them masked as close contacts. Is that what you're saying? In that
I
second
think that's a
bullet?
conversation we need to have, yes. Yes. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here with this, in my opinion. I think the first place to start would be, how many in this room thinks it's okay to quarantine students who are not sick with the virus? I mean, so if.
We're not doing that, are we?
No, they can come back immediately.
Right. They can come back
what
with the
would
mask.
change
That's what
is
we
that
had
we
put into
would-
place.
What would change is that we wouldn't require them to mask because they've always been allowed to come back.
Not always. We
Just
just
this
put
year.
that into place this year.
Right,
Okay.
right, in this plan.
so we've got a motion and a second to accept it as it is. Then we've got a secondary motion that is to strike all but the first bullet of page 6.
An amendment to strike all
Amendment?
but the first, yes.
Right. And then are you trying to amend his amendment or
Or add to it.
are you trying, would you accept the addition or do we need to go item by item and?
I'm not making a third recommendation or a second amendment. I'm still trying to ask questions and clarify everything. But, another thought that I had or another question is, I'm not sure that we would need to approve, and I could be wrong. I don't know that we need to approve MSHA's new guidelines. The MSHA's guidelines are what they are. We're going to follow them for our athletes.
Right.
I don't know that that's something we would need to approve by the board.
Well, as it currently sits right now, if you're a close contact, a school close contact, you can continue to practice with a mask as, as outlined by the head coach. You are not allowed to compete unless you go through DESI's state of play initiative, which we have not used yet. We've trained on it. We've not had to use it yet, where you're tested 3 times in the first 10 days and on every competition day. So I think from the perspective, that would be the
test to
change
play hasn't been
as
brought
far
up
as MSHA regulations.
And your recommendation tonight, you need their approval because their new guidance is that we follow your decision at the school board.
Right. My recommendation is that we allow close contacts who are asymptomatic to compete and practice without a mask, without the state of play testing through DESI's program. But we would need your approval as the board to be able to do that.
With negative tests or just asymptomatic? They were close contact, they're asymptomatic and.
As long as they remain asymptomatic there. Now, I don't know if you noticed in there, but we could use the rapid testing that we've been trained in with the nurses and Kyle and I and some coaches. If we need that with parent permission, we could use the rapid testing to try to fill in any gaps or whatever there may be.
Sometimes I think maybe erring on the safer side is probably the most positive thing. Just personal opinion. I mean,
I'm not to interrupt. We want to do what's best for our athletes.
yeah, best for the athletes.
Absolutely.
For the kids, 100%.
And if that means approving whatever part of this, then that needs to be a part of whatever amendment or
Yeah.
motion that.
And
is on the
again,
table.
I'm not a doctor, and I bring this to you because, knock on wood, COVID has not been a major issue inside our athletic programs. We have not had to cancel any games. We have not had mass quarantines because of spread, or mass positives because of spread within the athletics department. I believe that it is better for our kids and better for our programs with what we know now to not quarantine them or not allow them not to compete because they may have been exposed potentially at school. We know the data there says that the kids that are exposed at school, the ones that turn up positive is a very, very low percentage. Again, I'm not a doctor. I need somebody to explain it to me, but that's how it's been explained to you. And that's the rationale for my recommendation.
So just for clarification, is the MSHA COVID-19 protocols that you're recommending, is that part of the motion, the original motion?
Yes,
It is, okay.
Can we take that separate?
yes.
It seems like it's a separate issue to me, but
So do we need to make a motion to take that separately?
I don't know where we're
Ask a
at
question.
parliamentary wise. Yes.
So John, are your recommended changes based upon information that has come to light since our basically our groups, our stakeholders that meet and make recommendations to us? There have been events since they last met that would cause us to modify what they've recommended to us. Does that
Yeah, I
make
don't know
sense?
what the timing of when the meeting was, but I tend to follow what the Attorney General and the courts have to say.
The meeting was
As
December
opposed-
1st. and
Yes,
what
then that
you're-
would have happened
And
afterwards.
this happened after.
Certainly, yeah. So then, yes.
The Cole County decision came a little before that. I think it was the 27th of November.
Right, I was trying, personally, I was interested in deferring to our stakeholders who met and discussed this plan in detail and came up with whatever revisions they thought were necessary to maintain compliance. There's stuff that happened politically through our Attorney General's office, through whatever, that, I guess is putting us in the lead on this, that I personally, I don't really want to be in the lead on this. So,
I would say for me, and my goal in seconding this was that we could talk freely about this. I think people want to hear. I would argue that and this is not a slam on anybody here, but I'm speaking for myself. I feel unprepared to do this right now. I think that people spoke about this and spent a lot of time on it. And if we're gonna go line by line through this, I'd like to devote more time to that. Then we're an hour and 43 minutes into this. And if that's the route we want to take, then we should go all in on that.
That's the route we should have taken.
What I'm saying is, I think in terms of the board meeting tonight, if we're gonna do that, then we should probably take a recess and go line by line. Yeah, because I'm confused in the sense that I didn't know that we were having athletes wear a mask during practice. I could have sworn that I said I wasn't in favor. I could have sworn. I know I said I wasn't in favor of that when we did this 4 months ago. And that's new information to me tonight.
Okay. So let me unpack this a little bit. So we got a couple motions. I don't know, did yours get a second? I hadn't heard.
So I had amended the motion.
Right. And did
anybody
your
second
amendment
that?
get a second?
Which was, my amendment was to strike
Okay.
everything other than the first bullet point on page 6.
Okay, I'll second it. So you got a second. So that is there, and that's the motion that's on the table at the moment.
Can you clarify what that motion is?
Yeah, that motion is on page 6, related to updated masking recommendations, striking all but the first bullet point that says masks may be worn voluntarily by students and staff in the building of Joplin School District, but the wearing of masks in the Joplin School District buildings will not be mandatory. That would remain. Cohorting, encouraging staff to situationally, masking worn on all school transportation, and students and staff as close contacts instructed to quarantine. All those would be out.
So basically, just so I understand, because that's even new, we're only looking at page 6 right now.
That's the amendment, is page 6.
Gotcha. I thought we were talking about the whole
No.
thing. See.
Well, I mean, that's good. That's why we want to back up and make sure that we understand. So right now, the only thing that is there is this page 6 section, which has been moved and seconded. We're in discussion. We want to vote on that piece?
So to be clear on John's, we're striking everything below the first point.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead.
My question would be, what about page 10?
Do we take that
where it
separately?
says, well, we're approving this document. in
No,
its entirety.
only this amendment.
But the amendment is we approve the document minus this.
Okay, then you got to stack.
Don't you vote on the amendment first, then back to the motion?
The motion dies if we vote on the amendment.
Sure, you're better at this than the rest of us.
That's what happens. If it passes, I should say.
I see what you've done is amended my motion.
Right.
So the question is, does the amended motion pass? If it does, it would seem to carry the original motion with it as amended. If it is not passed, then we would then go back and vote on the motion, because the original motion as presented is not necessarily, it has not been presented to the board for vote.
See, and I thought you voted on the amendment first, then back to the original motion.
We do, and if it passes, it would seem to take the underlying motion with it as amended.
I don't think it does. I think it's two separate votes.
No, it doesn't. It's gone. That's why you make the amendment. You vote on the amendment. If it passes, it's gone. If it doesn't pass, then you go back to the original motion.
Okay.
But I understand what Brenda's saying. He's looking at page 10.
Which is.
And 9.
I'm sorry, and 9.
So what would make most sense is if John is in agreement to add those elements to your motion.
Yes.
And then it's all in one go that takes it all.
Yep.
So
I support
have you got that outline? Yeah, okay, you got it outlined, what you've.
Yeah, and so I think at least for me, in summation would be, and I'm just trying to give this in the simplest terms possible. If a kid is in class, a close contact ultimately test positive, then the school district through the health department lets that parent know, hey, you were a close contact to someone who tested positive. So at this point, what happens, and in my opinion, and I hope that's represented in the plan, the parent makes that decision whether or not they're going to keep their student home, whether they're going to send them in a mask, or whether they're just going to send them anyway, as long as they're asymptomatic the entire time. And that's the option I think that I would like to give to our parents. And if that represents that in this plan, then obviously that's.
So you're in agreement with that?
Yes.
That's
Part of
how
your
I would read
motion.
this.
I'm in agreement as the second of that.
Okay.
Okay, let's vote on that piece. Which, do you have more to change?
No, I don't
Okay.
have anything to change, I just want to know what I'm voting on.
Yeah.
So we are someone who's within 6 feet of an infected person for 15 cumulative minutes, starting for 48 hours for 2 days before the infected person has it.
And also on page
So
10,
that's
just so we
providing
know,
necessary information. And the reason you want that strictness is because it references health departments.
yeah, I don't know that we want to encourage anyone to follow that at this point, if it's deemed they no longer have the legal authority. And if they're not mandating quarantine, then I don't know that we need to mandate masks.
I'm not sure anything on page 9 or 10 is mandated, it's all recommendations, is
Right
that
there.
right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm ready to vote.
Okay, all right.
I just want to make sure, the third paragraph on page 10,
It says, apart from the school setting, close contact should quarantine as recommended by the local health department.
third one, students and staff.
Sorry, students and staff.
On page 10, correct?
Yes, on page 10.
Oh, sorry, I'm
Oh, it's on
page 9. I'm on page 9.
Okay.
So
Oh, look, they start the same way.
look at the page number on the bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah.
Page 10.
Okay,
Are we voting to remove that?
Yes.
yes.
And it says students and staff who are identified as close contact and instructed to quarantine may remain in and or return to school immediately, provided they wear a mask in a Joplin School District building and exhibit no COVID-related symptoms after 10 days or 5 of the negative tests, provided that individual will no longer be required to wear a mask in the buildings of the Joplin School District.
So we're not, if I'm correct, we're not mandating them to have to wear a mask if they're asymptomatic.
That's what you're saying
So
here,
that would
and
need
that's
to
what
be
John
taken, that
said?
would need to be taken out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
I just want to make sure that we're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
so,
I support that. I can support all
Yeah.
this.
so on the third bullet,
on 10.
on page 10, we're eliminating the whole bullet or we're eliminating that they wear a mask?
Well, they're not going to be instructed to quarantine.
Not by us. No.
Not by the health department either.
So students and staff are identified as a close contact
I believe.
may remain in or return to school immediately, provided they exhibit no COVID-related symptoms, and strike all the rest.
We give the power back to our parents.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
I believe, Brent, in bullet 2, if I'm capturing what you're saying, if we have close contacts, we're going to still quickly identify them. Parents will be notified if their child was a close contact. And that's where you want to stop there. So bullet 2, I think if you strike through bullet 3, bullet 2 is capturing
Captures the action.
what you're trying
Yep.
to do.
Yep. Parents can make an informed decision. They can keep their kids at
As well as the
home,
last bullet,
send them to school in a mask.
earlier you had recommended to
Yeah.
strike through that last
Okay.
bullet as well.
Okay, so we're just striking all of
the
bullet
third
3
bullet.
Okay.
Yep.
in 10. And then what are we doing with 9? I'm still not sure what we're doing with page 9.
So, and the last one on page 10, right? It just says we'll follow the health
Okay.
department. Yeah. And then on page 9,
9 would be where I need clarification as well of just what our
Process.
expectations are, especially that last bullet currently where principals and teachers will work closely with local health departments to identify close contacts based on seating arrangements.
Do you still plan on doing that? My assumption is yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that can say. The part that I
So
had
bullet-
particular questions about was the second bullet and the third bullet,
So
where it
bullet
says
2 is
instructed to
where-
quarantine. and then is recommended by the local health department.
So take out and instructed to quarantine and just say, students are identified as a close contact may remain and or return to school immediately. Take out the mask.
Yep.
And so
And
take
exhibit
out
no system,
provided
yep.
they wear a mask in a Joplin school building, and then pick it back up with immediately and exhibit no COVID-related symptoms.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're keeping them home if they have symptoms.
Yes.
If they have symptoms, yes.
Preferably any type of symptoms.
Right,
Yeah.
that's my thought.
Yeah.
And we're taking the masking
Right.
parts out of that
Yeah.
and the quarantine word.
Okay. Did that capture
Sorry,
everything?
I feel better about that.
Okay. John, you accept all those pieces and elements as part of your motion to,
Part of the amendment to the motion, yes, I
Yes.
support what Brent
Okay.
outlined.
now we're voting on the amendment to the motion, and if that passes, that also encapsulates the original motion. So
With all the changes.
with all the changes. Yep. Okay, so clarification?
Yeah, I'm still a little bit
Okay.
confused, and I'm sorry.
That's
I want
okay.
us to move beyond this and get this thing done. On page 10, we're voting to remove.
The third bullet
All the third bullet.
And nothing else.
And the
and
last
the
last
last
bullet.
bullet.
So we're no longer encouraging people to follow guidance from their health department
They
because
can
of
make-
whatever we heard from our
Yeah.
attorney general.
They can follow it if they want to.
But we will not be encouraging them to follow
Yep.
the guidance of the health department
We can tell them what it is.
and fully cooperate to mitigate COVID-19. Okay.
Okay? Please vote.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that motion doesn't pass. So we're still where we were to begin with.
I would like to, then we return, I believe, to my original motion. And I want everybody, I want people to look at this and make recommendations to our board, and I want to accept those recommendations from people.
I don't disagree with that at all, Sheriff. I know exactly where you're coming
So I
from.
want everybody to know, I have no desire to be hypersensitive about this. But some of the stuff we were striking just made me nervous. So I'm ready to vote on the original motion with the idea that we will call our stakeholders back and ask them to make further recommendations based upon additional information we've received from the Attorney General's office. Because like Riley, I've not studied this to know best path forward. And I just want us to be smart. And I think everybody here is being smart. And some people are better prepared to answer these questions than I am.
And I would just say, I wasn't part of that, but I would think that when they went through this, they didn't go through it with that in mind. I think they went through it with what's going to benefit their, the situation, and it is getting parents in the building, those types of things, getting back to
Right,
normal,
and
those types of
that
things.
is in our, that is.
And
in
we're
the
already
system.
approving that.
Yes, we're getting ready to.
But, again, my hope is, or was, it still is, to give the power back to the parents to decide whether or not they're going to keep their kids at home when they're not sick.
Okay.
But they're not, they do have that, I mean, they.
But they have to wear a
kids
mask.
can go to school.
Right. But they have to wear a mask.
Okay.
You know, I think we're going to see a major shift in this virus. I don't know if, you're paying attention. I know we talked about athletics and everything. People are getting positive tests, maybe asymptomatic, maybe spreading the virus. And I think we need to be conservative right now. This Omicron's a whole new different deal, highly contagious. You're going to see, I guarantee you, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm going to tell you we're going to see a major shift in this. In the next 30 to 60 days, you're going to see some major problems arising across the country. And I don't have a crystal ball, not going to say anything, but Omicron is highly contagious, and people are being vaccinated and are testing positive. Maybe they don't have symptoms, but maybe they are spreading the virus. So I think right now we got a new animal on board, and I think we need to be conservative. And so, that's just where I stand on this right now. I don't think we know enough, and I'm telling you, things are going to change. You're watching NBA, you're watching NFL, you're watching all these sporting events. things are getting very tight right now. People are testing positive like crazy. Now, do they spread it? Who knows? I don't know. But if you're positive, you could be spreading it. So, and these are people that are vaccinated. They don't have to be, they're not necessarily unvaccinated. They're all vaccinated and they're testing positive. So you could be spreading the virus and be asymptomatic. We're just into a situation we have no idea what's going on. And
Just like every day you walk outside your front door. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Enough with the ghost in the closet.
Yeah. Okay, so then now we're back to the motion by Sherrick, a second by Riley to approve the recommendation as presented.
Yeah, and just, I hope that our stakeholders get back together, and if we need additional amendments to this plan, they'll offer them to us. But I'm ready to vote.
Please vote.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
yes.
No. Okay, that motion passes.
So
Okay.
that gets this plan approved by our deadline of December 23rd.
Right.
And we can pull our stakeholders back sooner than we might have originally to look at the other language in light of
Yeah.
what we've learned in the last week when the Attorney General's letter brought more attention to it.
Maybe there's
In
some
the
content for thought
meantime,
exchange.
be watching for information as I get it that I send out. I wrote a little bit about it in last Thursday's update. Since then, Ed Council has come out with a podcast. I mean, there's a lot of news hitting us daily on this issue. So I will continue to share with you as I get those interpretations. Pardon? He's here?
Okay.
Okay.
So point of order. Hey,
Point of order.
Mike, can you FaceTime in?
Yes.
Okay, because you have to be able to vote.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So that vote was recorded improperly. We need the FaceTime to be able to vote. So,
Okay.
all right. So I'm gonna, as that point of order, I'm gonna go ahead and call the previous motion, which is the same one, but now we can count his vote. Yeah, so please vote.
Yes.
I would.
Yeah.
I would caution you on that. I'm not sure. I know it should be a 3-3,
Mhm.
and I don't know that you can call it back.
Okay.
I don't.
No,
So,
that's,
so if that's the case, none of Mike's votes are counted.
Correct.
that's,
That would be correct.
Yep.
Could we take a quick break? I
Yep.
know I need to use the restroom.
yep. Okay, let's take 10.
I move to, recess.
Second.
All right, we're adjourned until the chair resumes.
I'll call Kevin and see where he's at.
I know it's his right email.
It's been voted on. We will come back out of order if we need to talk about it again, but we can go ahead and take care of the other business that we've got. So that vote was lost. So it did not pass, but there's some other.
6 people are there, 1 people is on one person on FaceTime, and the rules are that it has to be, we'd have to revote it.
You can't re-vote. That's the challenge is you can't vote on the same issue twice in the same meeting. But we'll go to the next item, and now we've got you that we can move on. So
Without being,
Yep.
is there some precedent that we can't re-vote on something?
I mean,
It's parliamentary procedure.
Robert's Rules of
I mean-
Orders. It's.
When it's a unique FaceTime situation, we had it here.
But we voted, it's 3-3, and
the motion is lost. And that's
So
the,
this is a rule that they have to be on FaceTime.
Yeah.
Got 6 people
You have to
there
be on
that
it
said I'm
because
not
you're gonna vote.
required to be on FaceTime.
right, but your vote doesn't count if we can't see your face. That's
Even if you have 6 people.
right. No matter how many we've got. So all the way up until now, reality is we couldn't count your vote.
Those are the things of 6, 9, and 10.
And
This is.
So the vote would change if I revoted, if we revoted, the vote's gonna change? now?
yes, but you can't re-vote in the same meeting on the same item.
So one of the other people that voted is gonna change their vote?
No, they could at the next meeting. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go on to the next item on the agenda, and then we can get through that while we recalculate what to do on this one. So next up is the thought exchange consideration.
Okay, and we have Kevin Skelcher as well as Mark Manus on the line. And since last month's meeting, when this item was tabled, we have presented a thought exchange to our staff in relation to our teacher retention grant opportunity that we'll be bringing to you in January. And we've also have had another price reduction because there was a question of when it said Canadian dollars, which was essentially a mistake by Thought Exchange. They meant US, but they're going to honor that. So I want to bring to your attention that the price has gone from the 21,600. It is now 20,400, and that is different from your board item that was in your board packet. So that is a change. It is now a little bit less, and I want to thank Thought Exchange for honoring that. And Kevin, do you want to talk us through the live exchange that we're going to do tonight, as well as the results of our staff survey?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. I can hear okay. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you really well, Kevin. We'll try to come closer when we need to speak.
Yeah, okay. Not too worried. Yeah, so my plan here tonight is to give you a very brief overview of Thought Exchange through first participating in an exchange and then, obviously looking at the results of the exchange we ran this week. Probably what's important for you to just kind of know about us. So we are about a 10-year-old company working in education for that long. We have just over 700 customers currently. We have 20 or so in Missouri, and ranging in district size from about 1,600 students, some of it smaller, all the way up to large, the largest school districts, some of them in the country. And I would say, just for you to know about our sort of work, is that really we work to really fulfill on any school board's commitment to hear meaningfully from their stakeholders. And we have been working for this time to build a software tool that allows for quick speed to action. So, it's designed to be real time. that is meaningful for participants. So it's not just a survey, it's not just you giving them your ideas, it's really about you having a conversation with any given group about what's important for them. And our intention here is to really start the process of working with you through your strategic plan, and then coming out the other side of that, really work to figure out, once you have your plan, what are the jobs to be done now, and what are the change management processes around that, and what are the conversations to have with your stakeholders to implement the plan that you put in place. And also then to build into your communication plan, which you've already committed to, and Thought Exchange will come alongside that plan in terms of the delivery of that plan, with potentially some new staff and a new sort of way of doing business around communication. So that's where you're starting, that's where we're headed. And so just as a way to introduce you to the tool, I'm gonna have you participate. So what that means is you're gonna need to grab your phone. I'm gonna put this QR code up on, I need to be made the host.
Eric?
You should just be able to present.
No, I need to be able to share my screen, but I can't.
Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay. Not uncommon little hiccup.
Just click on share.
Give me a time.
Right now.
Okay, great. Here we go. Okay, so how this works is, this was a broad exchange across the community. I would send out a link, but in this case, we're gonna do it real time. So you just open up your camera. No need to take a picture of the QR code. I just want you to hold your camera up there, and then you'll see it says, join.exchange.com, join.com. Just click that button to get in, and it will bring you right into the exchange.
So I have a question.
I can see 4 of you.
My camera doesn't
So
work.
because it's a small group,
Can I
you get to share
text that number?
at least one, but preferably 2 thoughts.
Yes, but my
And then when we
camera
get
doesn't
into the
work.
second part of the rating, we're gonna go through and rate all of the thoughts in this.
Can you pause it just a second?
Yeah,
We're still getting connected.
yeah, absolutely. I won't move on until everybo's in.
Okay.
No, I don't.
We have one that
because it
doesn't have a
work.
camera.
Okay.
So
Here.
is that phone number something that can be?
Yeah, absolutely. Here, what I'll do is, yeah, okay, so what you can do is go to, navigate on your web browser to tejoin.com.
tejoin.com.
And then when you get there, put in this 9-digit code. And everyone else, feel free to be participating. We tried to pick a question that was, not without meaning. So as you're thinking about this, just in your own sort of work, in your own sort of position in the community, what you're hearing out there, in your listening, what are the most important conversations that you feel need to be had right now? And so we really want you to just share what's important for you, and that will help us understand then as we move through the process what's important for you. So I see that there's 16 participants here. Does that align with the number of people in the room there?
Looks pretty close.
Is anybody struggling to get in that wants to get in?
My phone's tied up.
Did you make it, Brent?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, we're good.
Awesome. Okay, great. So I'm going to move on. I can see some people are sharing thoughts. I'm going to move into the digital representation of the process. I'm just going to move screens here, and I'm going to be quiet just for a few minutes. I love the Christmas parties in there. I'm going to put on the timer. It won't stop at the end, but I'm just going to give a few minutes for participation.
And then you would go in and then rate those thoughts. as you refute them. So far, we had 0 ratings.
Yeah. So as people are done sharing, you'll see at the bottom, once you submit your thought, you can share more thoughts. And then when you're done sharing, you can then go to, it'll start to say, move to star or rating. And then you can start to rate the thoughts of others.
So I'm gonna ask the same question.
You can see people are starting to rate it now.
So,
That's great. So 15 thoughts, so make sure you go through, mostly all of them, we're looking for, probably a 10 to 12 ratio here, and I'll explain what all this means in a second.
Jeff, I'm at the rate thoughts, but it's
So
not.
if you're not into rating, just put, just coming up on, left here, make sure that you, are moving into the rate sharing your last thought or so, and then moving into the rate. All right, 30 seconds or so. Let's go through, try to get through another, 3 or 4 thoughts. Be great. Okay, that's great. Thanks for that. And we're going to go through some of these results here, just as a way of kind of understanding though what goes on in an exchange. So this idea of you sharing your thoughts first without sort of being swayed by the group is really important. So we spend a lot of time thinking about bias in our work. And there's a lot of different types of bias that can happen, but as it relates to planning and as it relates to sort of the work that you do as leaders, oftentimes your voice can sway the group. So if we see leaders share too much before a conversation, it can even sway the group. And so we have to be able to sort of let people share, be able to have a process where we move from the sort of individual ideation to sort of group consensus is what we're trying to do here in these 2 steps. So we moved from this individual sharing into this rating where we all came together and organized around some thoughts that were really important here. And so the other thing that's really important about, as it relates to bias, is this idea of frequency. So lots of times when we're trying to make decisions, and you'll experience this in your work all the time, is that when we can get swayed by things that are repeated often. If we hear something a lot, we can say, oh, that must be really important. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. So in thought exchange, we're really careful to help create a distinction around this idea of frequency versus importance. So what are ideas that are shared a lot? Like your experience of this is probably that people who are trying to get your attention say the same thing over and over again in an increasingly louder voice. If you have kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you are experienced in, in community settings, especially that can be, charged, probably have that experience as well. So we want to be able to be careful that we're not being swayed by the most commonly shared, loudest things in the room, okay? So that's why we use the STAR process to move, not just to take, in a survey, you just take your handful of ideas and then try to understand what percentage. We don't necessarily work that way, though we do some survey work. It's really about what ideas are presented and how is the group organized around those, okay? So there's some great thoughts in here. I can move the screen one on, we can just chat a little bit about this. I agree, really exceptional district. I've really enjoyed the time I got to sort of learn about what you're up to and spend with your leadership. Interestingly, this idea of efficiency related to involvement. So that's one of the reasons that we really focus on, being a mobile first platform, that you don't have to spend, it's not 40 questions, it's one question, that people can be involved in the conversation, even if they can't make the meeting, even if they can't show up for a town hall, even if they only have 5 minutes in their car, but as they're picking their kid up, they can participate and be involved in the conversation. So that's I'm glad that resonates with you. It's a really important part of our work. The other thing that I think around efficiency that's important to be thinking about is this idea of taking an iterative approach to conversation. So think like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So if you aren't aligned with your group at any given time, it's inefficient. They will tell you things that you don't want to hear because that's their only chance for things to be shared. And in thought exchange, because it's real time, because you can spin out an exchange and weekend or overnight, learn something from the group, you can engage more regularly, more often, and more iteratively, that you can build towards decisions through taking a Maslow's hierarchy of needs approach, where you just ask regularly, how are we doing? What should we be focused on? Then layer on top of that, what are some systems and structures that we need to address, and what are some things we can change together? And if we change those things, then what becomes possible for the future? Any questions on that? And maybe Mark, anything that you wanted to add just from a strategic planning point of view? I'll put you on the spot there, but it's okay.
You may be muted.
Is he muted?
Hey, Mark, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
there you go.
There
I'm
we go.
sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to get the screen pulled up. So I just wanted to provide a little background on the recommendations that Dr. Moss made with Thought Exchange. I had checked around talking to a variety of different communication directors about how they received input. This was not available when I was a communications director, and wow, I would have loved to have this tool because it allows you to engage your community. It allows them to have a free exchange of ideas and to share their thoughts. All the strengths that Kevin mentioned earlier are very powerful when you are working on a communication plan. Of course, we would use this product when we get input on the strategic planning process. But the reason I recommended this to Dr. Moss is because I think it's a tool that Joplin can use to implement the communication plan and also engage the community, get information and feedback from them in a timely manner, an efficient way. And it's an area that I know we need a lot of work on in Joplin, is engaging the community and inviting them in to have discussions in a meaningful way about what's taking place in the district, get their input, and this strikes me as a really powerful tool to achieve. So I did want to add that on, that I like I said, of course, we would use it in the finishing up the strategic planning process. But the impetus for this, in my mind, is a communication tool in the future for Joplin. So I at least wanted the opportunity for you to take a look at this and see what your thoughts are around if it'd be a good tool for Joplin in the future.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to pivot here. Before I pivot, any questions about that experience of sharing thoughts, rating thoughts, how that works?
Yeah, question for you, Kevin. Is this always a timed experience?
No, so in a group setting, it's timed experience just so that people kind of move through the process quickly. In an asynchronous exchange, like if you send this out, I guess technically it would be timed, but it would give people a week or a couple of weeks to participate. So the bigger the exchange, the more time you give people. The other thing about thought exchanges is that you want to participate a couple of times, right? Because thoughts that come in you haven't seen and you want to get exposed to those ideas. So we also just will invite people to come back and participate. So it's not like a survey in the way that you just participate once. It's something you can keep coming back to. You can share more ideas or continue to rate those ideas of other people through the whole course of the process.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to spend the last just few minutes. I'm going to just show you I can't show you all of the results of this. There's not enough time. But I will just sort of touch on some mountaintops here as we go. So this is an exchange. Every exchange has its own dashboard. This is an exchange that we ran around the teacher application grant, but I think more importantly, we use that grant as an opportunity to sort of have a meaningful conversation with our staff. So we didn't say, what do you want in the teacher application grant? We said, hey, as we look to value and support staff, what are some things that we need to be thinking about? And Thought Exchange is unique in the way that we can ask a very broad question. So we can just sort of, give people a prompt like, we're looking to do this, we're looking to improve this. In this case, it's we're looking to value and support. And then we just let people tell us what's most important. We did, in this case, use a couple of demographic questions to try to understand, of the group, what were important, sort of what things resonated with different groups. Tenure was important here, grade level. You could also do this by school. You could have sort of any number of survey style questions or demographic questions, in the preamble to the Thought Exchange itself. You'll notice here that just in about a week, we had 342 staff members participate. They shared a large number of thoughts, so more thoughts and participants is great. 675, those thoughts were rated 18,000 times. And on average, participants rated almost 30 thoughts. So that's a really excellent engagement level. We know that with exchanges that don't have high rating ratios aren't really valuable for participants. So we do that. We can tell from this data that it's an important question at an important time when people really have something to say and need to be heard on. We can quickly look through what ideas are important to the group, and you'll start to see some of the main thoughts around wage increase, comments around competitive salary, comments about cost of living, pay raises. You can see that becomes a really important idea in the exchange. But because we're able to use machine learning, we don't just end up with a ranked order. We actually have natural language processing that works in the background to help us build themes. So though salary and pay is an important part of the conversation, there's also a lot of conversations around well-being, a lot of observations around mental health that need to be addressed, a lot of suggestions for how to improve staff well-being. There's a lot of suggestions on initiatives here for and observations and sentiment around that. There's also a lot of comments around student behavior and observations related to student behavior and suggestions around things to improve related to this topic. So we can build these themes and sub-themes. I know I'm going through this very quickly, but I just want to give you an overall sense, even down to, the the professional development suggestions that staff have. So we've taken this very broad open question. We've now used the machine learning and some retheming to help understand, what are the big buckets of the conversation. Now I can take those big buckets of the conversation and then I can lay them over top of demographic questions. So now I can understand the themes along with the grade level and different requirements. I can see that there's common agreement around the sentiments related to pay and salary. But when we start to look at things like, systems and structures, we can see that there's different needs at different age teaching levels. So we can start to sort of pinpoint what things need to happen. So there's there's a sentiment here in pre-K around, fun initiatives and listening and learning to each other. So we can see that different grade teachers have different needs as it relates to the support of their administration. And the last piece I'll show you here, just so we don't spend a lot of time, is what we have a system, a way of analyzing how people rate thoughts that can help us find areas of disagreement, areas where people rate thoughts very differently, where they can see that there's thoughts that some people rate really high and other people rate really low. And we can start to see, okay, these are the things that people disagree on the left. But down the center here, here's the things that they agree on. And sometimes there's really, two opposing groups. Doing a lot of, in the spring, we were doing a lot of, COVID exchanges and safety exchanges. And there was, people that were for masks and against masks, and people that were for vaccinations and against vaccinations, people following along ideological lines and having heated conversation around who was right. But what we were able to do in those cases is help districts find common ground. What are the things that both groups agree upon? And even in this exchange, we can start to see there are some things that create, disagreement around spending, around, diversity, around, the feeling of need to be supported and professional development. Not everyone agrees on those things, but there is common ground around these, wages and pay increases, these things that we've heard. A lot to dig in here, but I really wanted just to give you a sense overall of some of the capabilities of the dashboard. I'm going to take a pause there. Question, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just come back here so I can see you all. Questions, comments about any of that? Concerns, things you're like, not sure of?
Okay, so I've got a question. Does it generate content, or that's what you got to feed into it as the content?
So the content in terms of like
what questions are you going to ask? What's the,
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I can show you that actually in the software. So inside where the exchange is organized, we have what's called the studio. So inside the studio is where there's created exchanges already. We have, you load those into your calendar. Those things can be sent out when they're ready. But we have questions that we've thought through, not just around, planning, but also around things like budget, things around facilities. Actually, as you bring in new leaders into any given position, we can help support, new principals coming in and running exchanges in that new school, or as people come into new roles across the district, we can help first ask the group what are the skills needed, and then as you put people in positions, what are some of the things that they should know in their first 30 days, in their first 100 days. So there's various exchanges built here in the studio.
And we can also customize our own. We can
That's right,
choose
yeah,
from
and
that
so
or
we
customize.
come alongside you with so we have an onboarding team that sort of helps design your initial exchanges, helps you get going, helps you make sure you're asking the right questions, and then also coming in and helping with some of the analysis and the organization of the data after your exchange.
Kevin, could you share some quick examples of how school districts have utilized this tool to get public input, external input outside the system.
Yeah, that's great. So there's, the best way to think about sort of the kinds of conversations to have are what are the, in every given year, there are conversations around, budget. There's conversations around how to spend money, how to save money. There's conversations around boundaries, how to move things around facilities, what's needed. So you think about the business case or the business cadence, right, in any given year. And then districts start to use thought change in all of those situations. And it becomes sort of this yearly, in the spring, you're going to do a budget exchange, in the fall, you're going to do a welcome back to school exchange, in the spring, you're going to do a wrap up thinking about next year. You start to ask, asking parents about their kids' learning, about their kids' experience at school. Really, this idea of bringing parents into the fold of education. This is a really good opportunity to be asking them, what are your observations as a parent? What do you feel like the district should be thinking about? What are some of the challenges you see students facing? So any kind of, any sort of given conversation that you have a need for, we've probably done over the years, dozens, if not hundreds of those kinds of conversations. Does that help?
So, a question I have is, how is this different than the way like a Survey Monkey behaves? Because a lot of what he went through, you get the same results out of a tool such as that.
Can you repeat the question?
So, yeah. So the question is, there are already tools out there and available, like Survey Monkey. How does this differentiate between a tool that's free and one that is not?
Yeah. So, I think the first thing is that, so we're very different than a survey in the way that you give people, in a survey, you give people your ideas. Here's our list. Here's our, 4 things that we're thinking about. And then what you get is the percentages of people that agree or that align with that idea. It doesn't tell you anything about common ground. It doesn't tell you about anything about what they think. It doesn't tell you anything about what resonates. What's important for the group. The whole ranking of ideas is key to understanding and really cutting through the noise of what's just a commonly repeated idea and what's actually important. And we see lots of districts make lots of mistakes and spend lots of extra money on doing things that have strong survey agreement, but without understanding what people actually think and how it actually resonates with the group. So you'll see, well, we did a survey and it seemed like, 60% of people were supportive of something. And then you go to implement that and you get a bunch of pushback. You get a bunch of pushback, one, because you had no access to the people that disagree with you. What do they think? What are they thinking about and what's their position? But then also, you're just making a decision based on the majority. And that's not necessarily the best way to run the business, is to make decisions based on the majority of what the public thinks. You have to find a way not to democratize the process, but be able to openly hear from people, openly engage people in sort of a meaningful dialogue kind of way, but still have the system in place to be able to keep decisions where they need to be kept. And then the other piece is really just most people are tired of surveys. Just candidly, most people have moved on from surveys. They play a role, but most districts now are really looking for, and in this case I think it's true, really looking for more meaningful ways to engage more people, but still using the benefit of technology, right? Like when typically what happens in innovation is that people will take an analog process and then they'll digitalize it and hope it goes better. So that's, we used to have paper surveys, now we have digital surveys. Where real innovation comes in is like, when can you apply technology to do something that you couldn't otherwise? And even in this case, I could have come in and asked you what was important. We could have spent, half an hour going around, but instead I spent, 4 minutes, and I understand really quickly the conversations that you need to have around involvement, around celebrating the school, or, around all these pieces that already came out. So we can start to use an innovative technology like Thought Exchange to really accelerate and the district's ability to make decisions, but also then take the workload off your staff because we can automate a lot of things that were very heavy lifts before. You do a comment box in a survey, you then have to spend hours of staff time collating that data and trying to bucket that data and trying to make sense of that data, whereas in Thought Exchange, it just happens automatically.
Yeah, I would add one thing to that, and just to shorten, in my mind, it's an engagement tool. It's an opportunity for people to have a discussion around topics. Where a survey, you just go out, get a number around that topic. This is actually a tool that engages the community and I think has a more meaningful conversation, which I think is healthier than sending out a survey and just getting numbers alone. You get some open-ended feedback, but you're controlling that just by the nature of the survey. By the way, I'm a survey advocate. I believe in surveys in certain circumstances and used them effectively over the years. But I think this is a great engagement tool. And as I listen to what the public tells us and what the community, the internal community tells us as well, you're really hungry for a connection with the community. And that's one reason that I thought this would be a tool that would be effective for that sort of thing, because I think that dialogue is something that needs to happen across the spectrum of the organization. I think this is a really effective way of doing it. So.
Does that answer your question?
Any other questions, gentlemen?
All right, thank you, Kevin, for taking the time to share.
Mark? Okay, more discussion?
I have some questions, probably for the administration, but it's probably no secret. I've been critical of the administration for not reaching out to our community or the public, our parents in some situations over the last year or so. So I guess my question would be, is there a change in philosophy, or is this a tool that's going to enable that or enact that or allow that to happen more so than, say, the Google suite that we already have?
Not sure I understand your question about a change in philosophy.
Well, I mean, I don't want to, well, for example, I guess, we had the opportunity to reach out to parents for the AB schedule last year, just to gauge their input, their thoughts, and we didn't do that. So I guess my question would be, is this going to be a tool that will be used to reach out to parents where in the past we haven't done that?
I think this is a tool that could have helped us a lot through that process. Yes, and I know that from our board retreat in June, the communications was one of the main goals that the board put forth at that time, and to have a communications plan, which was part of the rationale that we brought Mark on. And I hear from the board frequently that we need to do a better job of telling our story and that we need to engage our community. So if this is a tool that we can not only use during our strategic planning process, but an ongoing part of the communication plan that's also being developed, I think it's worth looking at. And that's why I would advocate for it, because I do think, as they articulated in the preliminary interviews with Mark, is that our community does desire more engagement and more conversation with us. And I like the way this differentiates the data in a different way than just a regular survey. And when they talk about polarizing ideas and where are those as opposed to where do we unite, I think that's something that we really need.
So what would, and I'm just going to say this is approximately $2,000 a month. If we look at a 2-year purchase, I mean, rarely would you not divvy up for a second month, for a second year. So 2 months, 48 or 45 to $48,000. What does $2,000 a month of information look like for you? Because that's what we're trying to agree to. How can we get $2,000 worth of information each month? What is that going to look like?
Well, I think if it's guiding our decisions in a more informed way when we think about facility planning that could ultimately mean millions, or we're thinking about allocation in our budget, which is 100 million a year, and things such as that, then suddenly that amount kind of pales. We've saved money since I got here in not having a communication department and not having a communication director, when we used to have an entire department devoted to that. So to start reinvesting district dollars in that communications piece and in that engagement piece, I think makes good sense for our district.
And then my last question would be, can we gain the same amount of knowledge? And I like this program. It's pretty cool. It's going to have a lot of positive things built in within it, obviously. But can we get the same type of information from something that doesn't cost us $2,000? Like, and I don't know what it's called within the Google Suite, whatever that platform is that, because.
In a standard survey.
Yes.
Well, I think that question was asked and answered. It's an enhanced engagement with thought exchange as opposed to a static survey. This is interactive. People come back to it, and you start developing themes that I think even if you leave an open-ended box in a survey and somebody puts their idea, that's not necessarily an idea then that is shared with all the other survey participants as it is here. So it's a more two-way communication.
I have a question for Mark. Can you get Mark back?
Mark?
Hey, Mark.
Is he gone?
He just turned off.
Yes.
Oh, you're there. Riley has a question.
Hey, Mark, Riley Hartwell here. Question for you. In terms of response rate for surveys versus thought exchange, would you say that thought exchange encourages more responses?
Do you mind?
Yeah, I will. So comparing thought exchange to traditional surveys, can you characterize the volume of responses in thought exchange versus a traditional survey? Is it the same? Do you get more responses? Is it double?
Right.
Is it 10 times?
Okay. Yeah. So here's the thing, and why they have, different purposes in a way. So if I were to conduct a survey, let's say at Springfield, when I do our frequent voter survey, it would be important to have a random survey, make sure demographically you have the right mix to match what the voter turnout would be. Whereas with this particular tool, it's like I said earlier, it's more of an engagement tool. When people are sharing thoughts and ideas, you obviously are going to get some numbers around that, but they serve two different purposes. So for the thought exchange, I appreciate the percentages. I think they're helpful to look at, how people are sharing ideas. I'm more interested in this for Joplin when it comes to the ability for you to see what people are thinking and how they share those ideas and how the commonality that exists versus, 70% say this and 30% say this. I know that's part of what the service is in terms of getting a feel for it. But of course, if I were going to conduct a survey, I would want to make sure it was random. I would make sure a certain percentage reflected, a given demographic or universe before I would say, well, this is where we're falling on this particular issue. So it's really a separate tool. I think to answer your question though, I think it allows for more input and more engagement than a survey.
And that's
in a proper fashion of discussion with your public, internal and external, than a survey does. It's a far greater tool for that and engagement than it is, in my mind, it is reflecting a percentage. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Just one comment. Yeah, it did. Go ahead.
It did answer.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, so it also kind of depends on where you're running the exchange. So, if we are running a town hall, we're gonna get 80, 90% of people, probably 90% of people participating and sharing their thoughts, and you wouldn't get to hear from those people otherwise. So in large community, like what I call an asynchronous exchange, you want to make sure that you're asking the right question to get the most number of people participate, but in the right setting, you'll get extraordinary numbers of participation. You'll get everybody participating. Loosely.
So let me ask you a question.
And it's making, like, we see, question?
Yeah. So we do something similar through the Teams application with work, but the problem is when it becomes interactive, you can't filter anything. And what ends up happening is some of that filter then takes on an extremely negative, and people feed off of that, and then that negative becomes their fact.
Okay.
And so we went down that path with with customers thinking, hey, this is going to be great. And holy smokes, did we get some different animal than what we thought we were going to get? Because it became almost like a negative chat room on all things wrong in the world. And we could not filter what was coming at us from all over the place. And that's just like a small customer group. Think about when you open this up to the community. How do you deal with that?
What if the negatives get 5 stars?
Yeah, this is a great observation. So in chat rooms, that's absolutely the problem. So like in a Facebook chat room, and if that kind of style of engagement, there's no mechanisms in place to make sure that it's an equal and fair process. So what you get is you get groups of people, like-minded people, sort of resonating off each other, and it kind of gets worse. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, we were just asking a simple question and we just got 35 negative comments. So the way that we use, there's a couple of things in Thought Exchange that's designed a little bit differently. So in our natural language, so step back, so in the starring process, there's 2 algorithms working at the same time to make sure that that doesn't happen. So, and then I'm going to add a third piece in a sec. So the first algorithm is to make sure that each thought is seen a similar number of times. So people don't come in and see that already are the highest rated thoughts. They just see the thoughts that need to be sort of caught up in the process. And then we use natural language processing, or AI, to show people diverse thoughts. So they're not just seeing a bunch of negative thoughts, they're seeing all kinds of ideas. So then ideas that are rated high because they're rated high by a diverse group of people. And also they are not overrated more than any other particular thought. So we're careful how we sort of manage the human behavior there. And then the third thing is that we layer in a level of moderation. So we have personalized moderation, meaning leaders and participants can moderate, but we also have AI moderation, where we can remove anything that's overly negative, that's rude or hurtful, that's inappropriate, or that identifies any individual. So we can add a level of sort of safety around that to ensure that those thoughts are, so to ensure that the process isn't getting away from you like it does sort of in chat groups.
Okay.
And that sort of problem is more of a function of the technology, not sort of a function of good process.
Thank you. Okay.
I just have another comment. It's not a question, but back in July, when the board approved Mark Manus's employment, we were told that the total cost was $70,000 and that it was a turnkey research project. And now we're being told that in order to do a better job, that we need to purchase a $20,000 to $24,000 platform. And that was in the recommendation from July. And I'll just say here, these are from, I think this is Mr. Manus' stuff, but it's the proposal of services. And he proposed that this process was thorough, it will stand alone as a uniquely designed strategic plan. And then in the discovery phase, there were 3 items, and the third one was a quantitative research utilizing online surveys. And he talks about following the qualitative data collection described above, surveys, key stakeholders, et cetera. And now we're being asked to approve a $20,000, $40,000 or $60,000, depending on how many years we would have this endeavor. Just seems contrary to what we approved in July.
I would say in closing, I don't want to belabor this issue, but I like three things about this. The first one, that it takes, and I mentioned this at our board retreat, is that it takes away the administration's ability to be involved in the process. It's more of an organic process. So one, it takes the workload off of them, and two, it's more, I would argue it's a more organic process. Second of all, I'm all about engagement. It's the name of the game these days. You know, what are people looking for on Facebook? Engagements. Twitter, engagements. Instagram, engagements. And people are engaging in a different way than I think we've ever seen. And I take the time to fill out surveys all the time, whether it be at my job or in my private life or in something I'm passionate about. But I would argue that I'm in the minority for that. And also, I would also like to say that, last but not least, I don't think Mark was disingenuous when he said it would be a turnkey operation. I believe he can do what he set out to do originally with what he proposed to us. But just like we had Crossland and we had other groups come to us tonight and said we need additional, in addition to make this better or to make this particular process improved, or this is something that wasn't expected, but in the end, ultimately, it's going to make us better. That's why I voted on a change order tonight. And in a sense, I see this as a change order to what Mark originally said. I don't think, like I said, I really don't want to go down the route that Mark was disingenuous in what he said. I think that's what that's what you're saying. I think you're wrong in saying that. And Brent, let me finish. In the sense that I would argue that it's very frustrating that we hired an individual to do the job of the strategic plan. And now I'm not comfortable saying that I know if he's recommending this to me, and I think this is within reason, he's not asking us for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I struggle to say no to that. I think it can help us ultimately. I don't know survey work. I don't do survey work. I don't do strategic plans for districts. This guy does. And if he thinks that that's important for us to be able to get as much input as possible from as many people as possible, I struggle to slam the door on that. I really do. And I've been a long time opponent of having Google surveys do anything for us, because I've heard time and time again from our staff members that whether it's true or not true, they don't trust that process. And if this enables them to become more engaged in our strategic plan, which is much greater than all the people at this table, then I'm all for it.
All right. Have we come to a motion yet? We're still in discussion. I'm thinking that has everybody had an opportunity to share their thoughts? I mean,
Just before we do a motion, when you look at the contract, and I called this out last time, the timing and the dates are wrong on this. Now this says December 1st, we're at December 14th. I'd suggested at the last meeting we discussed this, to move this to February 1st if someone was going to entertain a motion, but this document still reflects a date in the past, which I don't think is probably proper to proceed with it as it is. Now someone may think differently, but I think we should probably move the dates.
What's the date that you said?
February 1st was the date I suggested, just simply because I know school's ending. I know Christmas and New Year's is here. And I know once the teachers come back to school, they're a little busy the first few weeks, as is everybody else. So I thought, push it out just a little bit would be appropriate if the board wanted to entertain this.
Kevin, the date that I'm seeing on my agreement that was amended to $20,400 is acceptance by December 31st.
Yeah.
And then I see that we would start the program in January.
That's right.
Does that start with training our leadership team on the use of that? Because what John is asking is, with the rush of all things to be done at the first of the year, could we move that contract start to February?
Right. I was kind of thinking about it the other way, is that we have that we have sort of this, like, if we were gonna move ahead tonight, we could even try to get together before Friday to do a planning session, then start building the exchanges and have them ready to go for the new year. And whether we press send, the second week or third week of January, we'd sort of give you this 2 weeks extra to start planning and going now. If we want to look at an extension in February, probably what I would just do is add an extra month onto the contract. I'd have to get agreement on that. We can figure that out. It wouldn't change this agreement, but we could give you an extra month so you would have January effectively for free, and do it that way.
So that would give us an extra month for free. We could start building our exchanges and be able to roll them out in the other timeline. Okay, thank you.
There you go.
Okay. Anybody else?
Make a motion to exchange the thought exchange agreement with the amendment that it begins on February 1st.
Okay. There's a motion.
Is that soon enough for Mark, if it passes, to be used for what he is intending it to be
Mark,
used
is
for?
is that enough time for you to make it relevant for what you need, waiting till February or starting, next week? I mean,
Well, but we're essentially going to start building those exchanges in January because essentially we've added that month in of service. So it should be.
Yes, that works for me.
Okay.
And just as important to me, in addition to the strategic plan, I think it's obviously a useful tool going forward with the communication plan as well, I think. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
if the board passes here, we can figure out the contract piece from our end to make that work.
Okay. So there's a motion. I'll second it for the sake of voting it. Any further discussion? All right, please vote.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. All right, and motion passes. Okay. So thank you, Kevin. Thank you for helping us with that extra month to make it fit into the plan.
You're welcome. Have a great holiday, everybody.
Thank you. All right, next up.
Next up is our Moso Caps.
Jeff, did you vote?
I did at the same time that Mike did.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
I didn't know if you voted.
Mike,
I voted affirmative also.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
my battery's getting low. So if suddenly we die off, call Sherrick or someone else because
Yeah,
I
you're
think
gonna die.
I may lose some juice.
You want to call him?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Ah,
Even better. Stay where you're
somebody had
at.
a cord. Never mind. Carrie's got a cord. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, good deal.
All right. We're ready.
You ready? Okay, Brad and Suzanne are with us tonight. So if we have questions, they're here to answer. We are back to the consideration of the Moso Caps program because it was tabled in our last meeting as well. And since that time, we were asked to do a survey of our students, and there was a presentation of the program to the seniors as well as our sophomores who will be juniors next year and our juniors who will be seniors next year. And so we had the survey results in your packet, and we're also good. We have them up on the screen, and I can talk you through those results because I think that was the big question going on there, Eric. So submitting to the sophomores and juniors, we had 226 of our students choose to participate in the survey that followed the presentation. And of those, we had 138 that said yes, it sounded like something they'd like to have the option to choose next year. 88 said no. If you signed up for Moso Caps, which time period would you prefer? Because we looked at morning, we looked at afternoon, and it was about 50-50. The majority of our sophomores and juniors said afternoon, but we had 59 in the morning and 77 in the afternoon. Will transportation to and from Missouri State be a problem? And and to my industry partner be a problem for you? 110 of those respondents said transportation would not be a problem, with 28 saying yes. And then we ask, how will you get to and from Joplin High School to Missouri Southern and your industry partner site? Of those, 85 said I will drive myself, 24 said parent transportation, 12 said they were not able to make arrangements, and 17 said they would carpool with another student. If you participate, which occupation strand will you choose? Health sciences was the highest at 61. Human services was second at 46. And 16 of our sophomores and juniors said business, marketing, and entrepreneurship. And 15 said none of the above. And they may have been some of the no's. Will fitting this into your junior and or senior schedule be a problem for you? 97 said it would not be a problem. 39 said it would be a problem. Have you or do you plan to take a dual credit college course or advanced placement course during your high school years? 106 said they had or planned to, and 32 said no. So then we asked the seniors, because they're reflecting back on had it been available, knowing that they could not participate. But we wanted to get their reflection on that. Particularly, I think, Brent, you were interested in could they have fit it into their schedule. So of their reflections, does this sound like something that would have interested you? 36 said yes and 41 said no. And we had a lower participation rate in that one, probably because it was past tense. We had 77 in all respond to the senior survey that went out after the presentation. And then of the two blocks, 39 said morning and 37 said afternoon, so about 50-50. Which of the strands? In the seniors' case, they were saying 25 in human service, 16 in business, and 13 in health sciences. And then, of course, the none of the above were probably some of our no's to the original question. Oops, don't know how that happened. Let me look at mine.
Could you back up 2 slides? I think you said that one wrong. If I read that right, it says 39 said it would not have fit into their classes, 37 said yes. You made a comment based on time.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was jumping ahead. Sorry about that. Well, let me go to this one. There's would transportation be a problem? Would transportation to and from the college and industry partner side have been a problem for you? 27 said yes, 49 said no. How would you have gotten to and from? 47 said drive myself, 9 said parent provides transportation, 7 said carpool, and 13 said I would not have been able to make arrangements for my own transportation. Have you taken or are you currently taking either a dual credit or advanced placement course? 47 said yes, 28 said no. And that is our survey results. So I think the question before the group, we went ahead and we included past action items and information that's been shared at all of our other meetings. So it looks as though we have well over 59 that would consider it, and the transportation or the fitting it into their schedule is not a foreseen barrier to that. Again, we can't guarantee that of those that responded, they would all be interested, but the survey does show a greater interest than the 59 slots. And that is with those that chose to participate in the survey.
Well, that's interesting. And it's also very interesting looking in the rearview mirror for seniors that have had to deal with like life schedule, coming of age.
Right.
That their rearview mirror says, hey, I can't do this because of the conflict in schedule. And what concerns me is we got that 59 number again, but we don't have 59 that are saying they're interested or that it could work for them. It's a logistical nightmare. And I think, Brent, you called that out the last time, that And I think that's still the same thing. Sophomores and juniors have thoughts and ideas, but as you go through school, you learn more of the road of how do you actually get there to becoming a senior and then moving on in life.
So I've got a question just to make sure I'm comparing the right thing. So the $24.98 per student, that's $24.98 that the district would pay to Missouri Southern. How does that compare to like the dual credit that we got with Crowder as an example, where the payment is $60 per credit hour? So is that $180? Are we the district paying more than that 180, or is the student cover all of that cost themselves?
The students are paying for them to get the dual credit. What we're paying for are the instructors because they're on our payroll.
Okay.
So in this case, the instructors are on the Missouri Southern payroll. So probably it's apples to oranges.
Okay.
Because the dual credit isn't really the question. It's what does it cost to provide that course?
Right.
And those are our instructors for the dual credit and the AP. Whereas with most OCAPs, the salary costs and the ongoing payroll expenses reside with Missouri Southern.
So we pay the 2,500 per student per seat, right? And then, but the kids also pay for their credit hours, and I think it's $50 per credit hour.
In this case.
Right.
And then we have found already interest from some industry partners that would reimburse that possibly. And I see head nods, as well as we still have our program where we pay dual credit expenses for students that qualify based on free and reduced lunch and other needs.
Well, I would say, first of all, Dr. Moss, thank you for putting all this together. You did everything we asked from the last meeting. We said, is there interest? And the answer is yes, there is interest. I would like to call out the fact that there are not equal sample sizes between the seniors and the juniors and sophomores. So they are not equal in terms of interest. And I would also say that seniors are probably not as, if you don't have a strong feeling one way or another, and if you've been, and I think all of us can remember, when you're a senior, you're ready to get out the door. So you're probably not too interested in looking in the rear view too much in terms of this. But I would say for the students that are impacted, the number there, 138 yes, 88% no. If this was an election, it would be 63% of the people who said that they were interested, or of those surveyed, show interest. So they would win by quite the majority. But you did everything we asked. And Derek and I am very glad that Derek asked us to do this. Because what it did was it showed that our students have an interest. And there are no hypotheticals really with this. It shows a clear number as to what people are interested in. And I think we do really well with data as a board. And for the most part, we always work towards following that. And you have presented data that certainly suggests that there is a significant interest in our student body for this. And I would also like to state that in terms of scheduling, most students don't see the issue there. And for somebody who was uniquely involved in a split campus at Joplin High School, I can argue that there have been certainly greater logistical issues that have been presented to this district that we have overcome and thrived in those situations because of, in a lot of cases, people in this room. And last but not least, 32 students are opting in that would not have received, that would not have been interested in dual credit before. So we already know we have low dual credit numbers, and 32 students are now saying, I want to get involved and I want to earn college credit. And I think that that's a win regardless. And just like we work hard for our students across the board, if we're bringing 32 more students to the table, and we already have those who have significant interest, this is a slam dunk for the district. And that's my thought. So Dr. Moss, Sarah, Carrie, Steve Gilbreth, anyone else who's watching who was part of this, thank you, because you did the hard work. This is easy for us to be able to look at information. So thank you to everybody that was involved in this. Let's trust our kids.
Anybody else?
Riley, I have a question for you. So who is your employer?
Missouri Southern.
And so where would you rank yourself on, say, the totem pole of employment? Are you at the top where you're very secure? Or are you at the bottom where you might not be as secure if there were financial struggles with the university?
So Brent, I would argue that that's an inappropriate question because I've signed an ethics.
And I would argue
Can
that.
I finish?
Well, I was trying to finish,
question.
which you didn't allow me to.
You asked me a question.
And you haven't answered it.
I'm trying to answer your question. I know you're trying to play gotcha in front of everybody, and that's okay. But my point to you is this, is that I work in a different division from academic affairs, okay? So totally unrelated. In addition to that, I would tell you that the people that I socialize with and people I know in this community, because unlike you don't work in this community. I do. And I'll tell you that the people I talk to on a consistent basis are in favor of this in terms of business, education, and across the board. So I don't appreciate the gotcha games about Missouri Southern because it's wrong.
Well, once again, you're wrong in framing my question. So at the very minimum, this would violate the spirit of our regulations set aside by Missouri.
We do have a personal financial disclosure on file.
I understand that. But at the same time, you have a vested interest in this particular situation. You should recuse yourself from conversations relating to it.
That's not correct. What's my vested interest? What do I get out of this?
Well, they're your employer.
What do I get out of it? So let me ask you this. Anybody who can vote on, okay, let me just go back. There's been other members of this board who've been employed by Missouri Southern. They couldn't vote on anything to do with Missouri Southern, even with a personal financial disclosure.
I'm just saying, I believe it violates the spirit of our
Well, I would
regulations.
argue that your behavior right now is extremely inappropriate.
Okay, gentlemen, we're gonna move on. All right. Does anybody want to call this to a vote?
I'm gonna say one thing.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was listening to Mark Manis and I thought this MOCAPS sounded exactly what he thought the direction of Joplin schools needed to be moving in that direction with community involvement. Now, maybe I missed, just because I'm listening through teleconference, maybe I missed, but did I misunderstand what he was saying about our deficiencies and needing to get more community involvement? And I thought, when I was listening to that, I thought, boy, MOCAPS just fits right in line with everything that he's saying. Does anybody, is that not what his?
That was his third pillar, was community communication. That was his third pillar. Engagement.
Yeah.
I had written down
And branding
something.
our program offerings.
I think this is silly, this back and forth arguments with, Riley, because he works with Southern. Everybody could have a connection with Missouri Southern one way or another. I think it's critical that Joplin, I think this is just an unbelievable opportunity. I know I've heard that, Missouri Southern doesn't have any skin in the game. Well, Missouri Southern is educating our students, giving them the opportunity for college credits and putting them in work situations and getting them involved in the community. And I just think it's an outstanding opportunity. And then we have proven that our students are highly interested in this, in being involved in this program. And I think we need to give our students the opportunity, if it doesn't work in a year or 2 or 3, 30 days, we can get out. But why would we limit? I think in 5 years, you're going to see this thing exploding. And if we did do it, we think, how silly were we not to be involved in this? And I'm not concerned about that filling these 59 seats. And I'll tell you what, I'd be glad to pay
for the first 5 seats that are not filled by our students. So I'll be glad and go on record that I will cover, if we are the first 5 seats we don't fill, I'll be glad to pay for it. That's how important I think this is, and would be glad to donate that money to Joplin's foundation for Joplin schools to make this happen. So 59,
Thank you, Mike.
now you're down to 54. You can fill 54, I'll pay for the next 5 that don't fill.
Our friends from Missouri Southern are here this evening. Did you have any additional information you wanted to provide the board before we take a vote? Yeah, okay.
So we have been busy visiting with a lot of our, we're looking at our, I can't remember, not premium, our strand sponsors, thanks. Our strand sponsors. And so we visited with Mercy Hospital, and they are making a monetary contribution to the program to help offset the cost for the students for their tuition. Also, Liberty Utilities has made a significant contribution that will be announced in a press release at some point soon to help offset the cost of the students. And then Arvest Bank, we've also spoken to them, and we have not heard back from them, but I know they are definitely interested as well.
We received their check.
Oh, we did receive their check. So I haven't been at work for 4 weeks because I've been out on sick leave. So, but I'm not sick. I had surgery. But anyway, and then also Cardinal Scale in Webb City. And so those have been our first four. And the first 4 that we talked to were all like, we want this. You know, we want this for the students in our local districts. We want to be a part of this. So not only are they making monetary contributions, but they're also willing to host our students in real world projects. The president of Mercy, he would like to have all the kids in all the strands. And then he also talked about, medical coding. And I said, well, that's not on our list, the computer science piece. But, it's something that, down the line we can take a look at as well. So we've had a lot of positive feedback and a lot of interest as well.
Thank you. I just want to make sure we had an opportunity to hear the latest, and you provided some information I had not heard yet.
My biggest fear right now is that if there were 138 kids that applied and 61 wanted in health sciences, you only have 10 seats in the morning and 10 seats in the afternoon, and that would be it. And like I said, whether it was September or October when we visited, these programs just explode and districts start looking at, okay, how can we expand it? Just the opportunities for the kids as far as numbers are concerned. So.
Well, I want to thank you both for being here. It's been a long and challenging evening, and
I'm just glad I'm on this side of the table and not in your seats.
Yeah.
Bless you.
So I'd like to say just a few things before I make a motion. Engagement is a big part of what I see Joplin schools needing to have. And right now we engage a lot through our athletics, which I think is fantastic. The question becomes how can we further engage? That had a lot to do with my vote on the thought exchange, just to let people know, because we as a board have talked about the challenges that we have with engaging our community. And my hope is that thought exchange provides methods of engagement that we haven't enjoyed in the past.
But sure, can you stay on the subject? We already passed a motion on that. We're done with that.
I'm sorry, John. I was trying to get there, and I apologize. I didn't get there quick enough. So I believe that the MOSO CAPS program is a similar opportunity for us to engage in our community, engage with business leaders. We see our competing districts being willing to engage in the MOSO CAPS programs, and I don't want the Joplin Schools District to be left behind in this program. And so my reference to that was perhaps late, and so I apologize. But I want people to know that my vote is, I don't know if I can prove the profitability of the investment that is being proposed, but I do believe that it plays a heavy part in our engagement back with our community business leaders. I just don't know that there's any way that we can fathom the opportunities that we may get paid back on whatever investment is made in MOSO caps. And our failure to engage in it, I fear that our students may be left behind on future opportunities that we will see our neighboring districts receive. So with that as my basic message, I would make a motion to approve the MOSO caps memorandum of understanding.
Sheriff, I have a question. With the monetary contributions from the other companies, does that bring our costs down, or is that?
That's covering the tuition for the
The
students.
student's cost.
Yeah,
So they
so
wouldn't have
that-
to pay for their portion.
Right, to make it more equitable.
I think with the new, with this being a new thing, I think that you could see opportunities, that if there's some success, that the opportunities to reduce the Joplin Schools District investment in it could be reduced. We're not there. And I don't believe that there's a dollar to our district that we should not expect to have to pay in connection with the initial funding of this project. But I just don't think we know what the future holds, and we have outs to get out of this thing. If it doesn't work, I am asking for a 1-year commitment for us to see what this thing could be.
Well, and I go back to my original.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mike. Go ahead.
If we only had 22 students, we're still paying. So that, and that's the hang up that I have. I do appreciate the work that was done, but we don't have 59 that are ready to sign right now. I have an issue with being a good steward of our money.
Okay, motion by Sherrick, second by Mike. Please vote.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No. Okay, that motion was lost. Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate you coming. Next up, Shelley, accounts payable.
Yes. The bill list tonight is totaling $6,045,721 and a little change. That we bring to you. Last year at this time, it was only 3.7 million, but it didn't include all of the payroll liabilities that's in this bill list. So
Make a motion that we pay our bills?
I'll second.
All right. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, that motion passes. Next up, Power School. Online enrollment.
Okay, Heather, with our technology department, is coming to join us, so thank you for her attendance, as this is at the end of our agenda tonight. When the COVID shutdown hit, we were in the middle of getting ready to start our kindergarten enrollment. Kindergarten enrollment, at that point, we had to figure out how we would get that registration in. Our old process was all in person. We moved that to a Google form status of a pre-registration process to get that information from our parents to get them into fully enrolled our students. We have kept, that's one of our COVID keeps. We were able to take away some of that paperwork in person. So where we are at today of bringing you tonight is an online enrollment express. With the current Google Forms system, our secretaries are still having to take all of that information from a 6-page PDF and still creating households, direct data inputting that into the system. This process would allow that to directly feed. We have been working on a lot of data error corrections. This would feed direct information into our system, where then the secretary's role and responsibility would be an approval and a verification, not so much of the data entry.
So a question, how many students is this involved?
This
Approximately?
would be district-wide for any new student into Joplin schools. So that's one phase of this online
Which is
enrollment.
approximately how many?
Annually,
Well,
I mean, we have at least 500, 550 in
500 per
kindergarten, plus
year.
all of your transfer students.
Yeah.
I think the high school alone, we have 200 some a year. So we're probably at
1,000.
1,000.
I think that's fair.
Okay, can I make a motion that we approve this program and
Yes.
help them out tremendously from
All
a
right,
clerical
motion
perspective?
by John, second by Derek. Discussion, please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, okay, thank you. Approved, that's approved. Okay.
Good idea.
Computer information science upgrade.
That is basically looking at some computers to add to our CIS curriculum. Their current computers are hardwired into their classroom. This would allow the technology to keep up with where they're at in their curriculum of manipulating software in that course.
So these are basically unlocked computers.
Eric, I'll have you contribute to that.
How do you monitor appropriate use is my only question on this. I read this one over
It's still
earlier.
gonna pass through the same filter that we use for wired versus wireless.
Okay, gotcha.
I have one question. I saw where on their bid, it showed a 2-year warranty and a 1 year. Are they giving us 3?
I wasn't really, in the bid process.
Okay. I'm trying to find that page now. But it said, here, it's right here. So at the very bottom of this, I don't know what number it was, where it's going through and telling us everything about it. It says Pro Sport, next business day on site, 1 year. And then right below that, next business day on site, 2-year extended. So we're getting 3 years total warranty.
I think that is a support.
Or is that support?
I believe that's a
Okay.
support.
Yeah.
But 3 years total.
Yes.
I make a motion that we approve the purchase of these computers to support our students.
Second that
All
motion.
right, motion by John, second by Derek. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, okay, that motion passes. Now, before we move to our last item, I'm going to circle back to G3, which is the consideration of safe return to in-person instruction. The motion was lost because it didn't pass. After consultation with Susan Goldhammer, she's confirmed we cannot take the same vote. However, we do have some time-sensitive issue given we've already given temporary approval of classroom parties on Friday. So what I would entertain from both motions that happened and failed was no one had a problem with page 7 being changed. So I would entertain a motion that we adopt page 7 that allows the parties to happen. And then we will have, that will allow us
Circle
to.
back and.
That will allow us to have another meeting where we can go through the rest of it, which has a December 23rd deadline of being approved to maintain our ESSER funding. So somebody.
I would
So
make a
moved.
motion that we allow parents into the building for Christmas parties.
I'll second that motion.
That people were calling in by teleconference when we had a majority.
Yeah.
And we went ahead and did that. So, you know, if this isn't gonna count, then we've made the regular voting over the past 2 years that hasn't been
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah, if you can see your face, you can vote. That's,
Yeah, but we've accepted votes on people that were calling in by teleconference.
no.
I've called in a time or two and not voted.
Right. When Brent has called in, he's not been allowed to vote because he doesn't have a camera on his phone.
People have voted.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know about those. And, okay. If you can share when that's happened, we can look back at the records and see if they were recorded as positive votes.
Jeff, you made a motion and Brent, you
Brent made a
seconded.
motion. I
Brent made a
seconded.
motion.
Brent made it.
Derek seconded to approve item page 7.
Page 7.
Any discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, yes.
Yes, okay, that motion passes. That allows us to move on. Now we can go to the last item, but just as a consequence of the previous vote, we will have to meet again prior to December 23rd, preferably sooner rather than later. So I'll share some times with you guys tomorrow and see when we can do that. And then what I would recommend is the pages, that the other 9 pages or 8 pages, look at those and be prepared, and we'll look at everything so we can come to a resolution. All right. So pluses and deltas.
I would call out the robotics program for the middle school. That's
Phenomenal.
fantastic. And for those that don't live in the athletic world, that live more on that side. I think that's a great program, and I appreciated the sharing of that. And then also the participation in athletics. I think, Matt, thank you so much for sharing that. It was great to see that we have that kind of participation growing in our middle school.
I think that's something that everybody was worried about when we first did that.
Yeah.
Was if we were going to have the numbers in it.
Yeah.
All right. Now I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Derek. Thank you, John. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, Mike.
When do you want to meet?
I don't know when I get home to see when we can meet.